Hello friends, welcome back to my channel BL Story World. This is last part of this story. I hope you like this video.
The guards stared at him. They looked at each other. And then, despite their rigorous mafia training, they completely lost it. The head guard threw his head back and let out a booming laugh. Your mate. The guard wheezed, wiping a tear from his eye. Kid, you look exactly like the guy our boss wants to bury in wet cement. He's not gonna mate you, he's gonna faint from shock. Leo's eyes narrowed. He absolutely refused to be mocked by men who bought their suits off the rack. It was time for a scene. Laugh all you want, Leo suddenly shouted, throwing his hands to the heavens. His voice echoed across the courtyard, easily loud enough for anyone inside the mansion to hear. You fools don't know the truth. William is hopelessly in love with me. He is a lovesick fool for me. Kid, keep it down. He weeps for my scent in the dead of night. Leo wailed dramatically, pressing the back of his hand to his forehead like a Victorian widow. He begs for my hand. We are a forbidden romance, a modern-day Romeo and Juliet, but hotter and with better cars. Tell him his beloved is here. Other guards were now coming out of the guardhouse, leaning against the walls, shoulders shaking as they tried to suppress their laughter at the sheer, unadulterated audacity of this gorgeous, unhinged Omega. Meanwhile, inside the mansion's opulent, mahogany-lined office, William was sitting behind his massive desk. He was a striking alpha, impeccably dressed, exuding power, and currently nursing a massive headache while reviewing security footage of Lucas's men tampering with his shipment lines. I'm going to strangle him, William muttered to himself, rubbing his temples. I am going to wrap my hands around Lucas's smug throat and squeeze until his head pops off. The heavy oak doors of the office suddenly opened. Julian, William's most trusted right-hand man and deadliest assassin, stepped into the room. However, instead of his usual cold, calculating demeanor, Julian looked like he was suffering a medical emergency. His face was bright red. His lips were pressed together so tightly they were white. His shoulders were trembling. William looked up, frowning deeply. Julian, are you having a stroke? Julian let out a strange, strangled squeak, cleared his throat violently, and slapped a hand over his mouth. No, boss, Julian managed to choke out, his voice wavering precariously. Then what is it? Did Lucas attack the Eastern warehouse? And no, boss, Julian said, taking a deep breath and staring intently at the ceiling to maintain his composure. Well, there is an Omega at the front gate. William raised an eyebrow. An Omega? Why are you bothering me with this? Send them away. I would, boss. But he's refusing to leave, Julian said, biting the inside of his cheek so hard he tasted blood. He is currently standing on the hood of his car, screaming to the neighborhood that you are, and I quote, a lovesick fool who writes him poetry in the blood of his enemies. William's jaw dropped. What? Who the hell is this lunatic? Julian finally looked at his boss, and a terrifying, desperate smirk broke through his composure. Well, boss, he smells like expensive vanilla. But he looks exactly like Lucas. Julian had to pause to stifle a bark of laughter. He says he is your soon-to-be mate. Shall I tell your beloved to come in, or are you too busy weeping for his scent? William pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a migraine rapidly building behind his eyes. An Omega. Not just any Omega, but Lucas's twin brother. This had to be a trap. Or a joke. Or perhaps Lucas had finally lost his mind and sent his delicate little sibling to do his dirty work. Bring him in, William commanded, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He leaned back in his leather executive chair, adjusting his cuffs. I'll give him exactly 30 seconds of my time. I'm going to scare the living daylights out of him, tell him exactly what I plan to do to his brother, and send him running back to his playpen. Julian bowed slightly, though his lips were still twitching. Right away, boss. A minute later, the heavy oak doors swung wide open. Leo didn't just enter the room, he practically floated in on a cloud of arrogance, expensive cologne, and overpowering vanilla pheromones. He completely ignored the four heavily armed guards flanking the walls. He ignored Julian. His eyes locked onto William, sitting behind the desk in his immaculate three-piece suit, looking incredibly dark and incredibly dangerous. Leo's face lit up like a Christmas tree. My big, bad alpha. Before William could even open his mouth to deliver his terrifying, practiced mafia boss threat, Leo sprinted across the room. He launched himself around the massive mahogany desk and threw his arms tightly around William's neck, burying his face into the crook of the alpha's shoulder. William froze. His brain completely short-circuited. First, there was the intoxicating, sweet scent of a prime omega filling his senses. Second, there was the soft, warm body pressing against him. But then, William tilted his head down. Looking up at him, grinning from ear to ear, was the exact same face of the man who had ordered a drive-by shooting on his favorite bakery last Thursday. It was Lucas's face. Lucas's eyes. Lucas's nose. A wave of pure, unadulterated disgust washed over William. "Get off me!" William roared, aggressively shoving Leo backward. He stood up so fast his heavy leather chair slammed into the wall behind him. He aggressively wiped his own shoulder, looking horrified. "Do not touch me. You look like the devil himself." Leo merely stumbled back a step, unfazed. He smoothed down his sheer silk shirt and offered a devastatingly bratty pout. "Rude. Is that how you treat the love of your life? I'm here to collect, William. You stole my heart, so now you have to take responsibility." William stared at him, genuinely bewildered. "Take responsibility? I have never met you in my life. The only thing I've ever taken from your family is 3 shipping containers of illegal cigars, and I burned them. You stole my sleep," Leo purred, taking a slow, predatory step forward. His eyes raked up and down William's muscular frame. "I lie awake at night thinking about those broad shoulders. So, since you ruined my sleep, the only fair trade is that I get to sleep in your bed. Naked. With you." In the corner of the room, Julian let out a sound that resembled a dying seal. He quickly turned his back, his shoulders shaking violently. The guards were suddenly fascinated by the crown molding on the ceiling, biting their lips to keep from bursting into laughter. "Are you insane?" William growled, trying to regain control of his office. He stepped out from behind the desk, towering over the smaller Omega, letting his terrifying alpha aura leak into the room. It was an aura that made grown men wet their pants. "I am William. I am a monster. I could snap your neck with 2 fingers. "Oh, promises, promises," Leo hummed. Without a shred of hesitation, Leo closed the distance between them, grabbed William by the lapels of his expensive suit, and shoved him backward. Shocked by the sheer audacity, William lost his footing and fell backward, landing right back into his leather chair. Before William could process what was happening, Leo swung a leather-clad leg over him and firmly planted himself right on William's lap, straddling his thighs. The room went dead silent. William was paralyzed. He was a ruthless underworld kingpin. He had survived assassinations, FBI raids, and turf wars. But he had absolutely no protocol for his mortal enemy's twin brother turning him into human furniture. "Get off me," William hissed through gritted teeth, his hands hovering awkwardly in the air because he absolutely refused to touch the Omega's waist. "Make me, Daddy," Leo whispered, leaning in close, his hot breath fanning over William's ear. "Though, I have to warn you, if you manhandle me, I'm going to enjoy it way too much." William's eyes darkened. Enough was enough. In a flash of lethal speed, William drew the silver Glock 19 from his shoulder holster and pressed the cold steel barrel directly against Leo's temple. "I am not playing games with you, brat," William's voice was ice. "Get off my lap, walk out that door, or I will paint my office walls with your brains." Julian and the guards tensed. This was it. The boss was actually going to kill Lucas's brother. The peace treaty was over. Instead of trembling, crying, or begging for his life, Leo slowly turned his head, letting the barrel of the gun drag across his cheek. He looked down at the gun, then back up into William's furious eyes, a wicked, filthy smirk spreading across his lips. "Ooh, gunplay," Leo whispered, his voice dripping with pure sin. "We're skipping right to the hardcore stuff on the first date. I mean, usually I like to be tied up first, but if you want to blow my mind right now, go ahead. Though, if you're gonna point a weapon at me, I'd much prefer the one you're hiding in those trousers." Julian violently choked on his own saliva. One of the guards let out a loud snort before slapping both hands over his own mouth, his face turning purple. William was speechless. The gun wavered in his hand. Who the hell was this creature? "You were repulsive," William muttered, lowering the gun slightly, completely thrown off guard by the sheer degeneracy of the boy on his lap. "You have no shame." "I have plenty of shame, I just don't use it around men I want to rail me into next Tuesday," Leo chirped happily, adjusting his weight on William's lap, ignoring the way the alpha flinched. I will never touch you, William said, his voice dropping the anger and replacing it with pure, exhausted logic. Do you understand me? Look at your face. Look in a mirror. You look exactly like Lucas. I have better cheekbones, Leo argued. And a much, much better ass. Ask anyone. William rubbed his temples with his free hand, sighing heavily. He decided to try a different tactic. He softened his voice, trying to speak to the Omega like a reasonable, albeit deeply disturbed, child. Leo, listen to me very carefully, William said softly, looking into those familiar, yet strangely vibrant eyes. Your brother and I are enemies. Mortal enemies. We hate each other on a cellular level. I wake up in the morning and my first thought is how to ruin his life. My second thought is breakfast. Leo pouted. But we aren't Lucas. We look the same, but we have different hearts. It doesn't matter, William said gently, but firmly. The face is the same. The voice is too similar. Leo, even if you were the last Omega on Earth, even if the fate of the human race depended on it, the mere thought of kissing a face that looks exactly like the bastard who poisoned my prize-winning koi fish last month makes me physically, violently sick. Leo blinked down at him, completely unbothered by the rejection. He just reached out, tracing a single finger down the line of William's jaw. Challenge accepted, sweetheart, Leo whispered, his eyes flashing with mischief. By the end of the month, you'll be begging to kiss this face. Julian, William said, his voice completely devoid of emotion, a dangerous calm settling over him. Peel this absolute lunatic off my body and throw him out the front gates. If he resists, pick him up by his designer belt and toss him into the rosebushes. Right away, boss, Julian said, looking immensely relieved to finally have an excuse to look away from the disaster unfolding on the chair. He signaled to two of the largest, most intimidating guards in the room, men whose biceps were thicker than Leo's waist. They approached cautiously. After all, this was Lucas's brother, the peace treaty meant they couldn't break his arms, even if he severely deserved it. All right, kid, playtime is over, the largest guard grunted, reaching out to grab Leo by the shoulders. No, never, Leo shrieked theatrically. He instantly slid off William's lap, dropped to the plush carpet, and wrapped both of his arms and legs around William's right calf, clinging to him like a desperate koala bear on a eucalyptus tree. You can't separate us. We are star-crossed. Our souls are intertwined. William tried to shake his leg. Leo didn't budge. Get him off me, William roared, his legendary composure shattering into a million pieces. He's like a heavily perfumed parasite. The two guards grabbed Leo under the armpits and pulled. Unhand me, you brutes. Leo yelled, refusing to let go. In his desperate bid to stay anchored to the love of his life, Leo's hands slipped from William's calf, sliding up to grab a fistful of the closest, sturdiest material he could find. Which happened to be the waistband of William's custom-tailored, imported Italian wool trousers. Heave. The head guard grunted, giving one final, almighty pull backward. Leo flew backward, sliding across the mahogany floor. But his grip had been terrifyingly tight. Swoosh. In a horrifying, slow-motion catastrophe, William's belt buckle gave way under the immense pressure, and his expensive trousers were yanked violently downward, pooling directly around his ankles. The heavy oak office fell into a silence so absolute, so profoundly terrifying, that you could hear a pin drop. Julian stopped breathing. The guards froze in place, their eyes wide with sheer horror. They were all dead. It was over. They had just pantsed the most dangerous mafia boss on the East Coast in his own office. They were going to be buried in the desert before sunrise. For 5 agonizing seconds, no one moved. William stood frozen behind his desk, wearing a pristine dress shirt, a tailored vest, a silk tie, and a pair of dark silk boxer briefs. Then, the silence was broken. Oh, my God, Leo gasped from his spot on the floor. And then, he threw his head back and burst into absolutely hysterical, shameless laughter. Don't look, boss. We aren't looking, Julian squeaked, immediately throwing his hands over his eyes and turning his back. The guards followed suit, spinning around to face the walls like toddlers in a timeout. Leo, however, didn't even blink. He propped himself up on his elbows, a wicked, delighted grin on his face as his eyes shamelessly roamed up and down William's exposed legs. Well, Leo purred, his voice dripping with pure sin. Someone definitely doesn't skip leg day. Look at those thighs. God, I want them wrapped around my head. And silk boxers. William, darling, you are spoiling me on the first date. William's face went from a pale shock to a shade of violent, nuclear red. The vein in his forehead bulged so far out it looked like a worm trying to escape his skin. With shaking hands, he violently hauled his trousers back up and frantically fumbled with his belt. Out! William screamed, his voice shaking the crystal chandelier above them. Get him out of my sight right this second, or I swear to God I will shoot every single person in this room, reload, and shoot you all again. Panic ensued. The guards abandoned all gentleness. They hoisted a cackling, kicking Leo off the floor like a sack of extremely expensive potatoes and practically sprinted toward the door. Call me, Willie. Leo blew a kiss over the guard's massive shoulder as he was carried away. I'll text you my ring size. Keep those thighs warm for me. The heavy oak doors slammed shut, leaving William panting, red-faced, and utterly humiliated in his office. Outside, the guards unceremoniously dumped Leo on the sidewalk outside the wrought iron gates. Leo simply dusted off his leather pants, fixed his hair in his car's side mirror, and leaned against the hood, waiting. Surely, William would realize his mistake, come rushing out, and sweep him into his muscular arms. An hour passed. No William. Just a guard who threw a half-eaten sandwich at him and told him to scram. Playing hard to get. Classic alpha behavior, Leo muttered to himself, unfazed. I respect it. Satisfied with his day's work, Leo hopped into his red sports car and drove off into the night. By the time he pulled up to his own sprawling, fortress-like mansion, it was past midnight. He tiptoed through the grand foyer, slipping off his shoes to avoid making a sound. He was almost to the marble staircase when the lights in the living room suddenly flicked on. And just where have you been? Leo froze. Sitting in a massive leather armchair in the center of the room was his twin brother, Lucas. Lucas looked exhausted and terrifying. He was still wearing his blood-spattered tactical gear from a raid he'd conducted earlier that day. A glass of amber whiskey rested in his hand, and his dark alpha aura filled the room, thick with authority. Leo took a deep breath. It was showtime. Instantly, the sassy, shameless gremlin who had just sexually harassed a mafia boss vanished. Leo's posture shrank. He made his eyes wide and slightly watery. He pulled the sleeves of his sheer shirt down over his knuckles to look smaller, and let his scent shift from confident wild strawberries to a soft, sweet, anxious vanilla. He shuffled into the living room, looking at the floor. I'm sorry, Luke, Leo said, his voice soft, trembly, and innocent. I didn't mean to stay out so late. It's 1 a.m., Leo, Lucas said, his tone strict, though his terrifying aura was already dialing back at the sight of his fragile brother. The streets are dangerous. I've got enemies everywhere. Where were you? I was just at Toby's house, Leo lied flawlessly, looking up through his eyelashes. We had a group study session for our macroeconomics final. We lost track of time. Toby made flashcards, and we got confused about inflation rates. Please don't be mad at me, big brother. Lucas stared at him for a moment. He looked at Leo's big, innocent eyes, his soft pout, and the way he nervously played with his sleeve. The ruthless mafia boss completely melted. Oh, Leo, come here, Lucas sighed, setting his whiskey glass down and opening his arms. Leo immediately trotted over and curled up on the armrest next to Lucas, leaning his head against his brother's shoulder. Lucas wrapped a heavy, protective arm around him, pressing a kiss to the top of his twin's head. I'm not mad, buddy. I just worry about you, Lucas murmured softly, rubbing Leo's arm. You're too pure for this world, Leo. You don't understand how evil men can be. Especially men like William. If he ever got his filthy hands on you, I don't know what I'd do. I know, Luke, Leo said sweetly, trying incredibly hard not to picture William's magnificent thighs. I'll be careful, I promise. Did Toby make you study too hard? Lucas asked, his brow furrowing with sudden concern. You look pale. Did that little punk not feed you? Do I need to send my men to his house to have a talk about proper hosting manners? No, he fed me. Leo said quickly, not wanting Toby to end up in a ditch. I'm just tired. Okay. Good, Lucas said, gently patting his brother's back. You go upstairs and get some sleep. Tomorrow, I'll take you out shopping. We can buy that new designer watch you were looking at, okay? Anything my little angel wants. You're the best brother ever, Leo beamed, hugging Lucas tightly. I know, Lucas chuckled softly. Now go. Sweet dreams, Leo. Sweet dreams, Lucas, Leo said, turning and walking up the grand staircase. As soon as he was out of Lucas's sight, the innocent, angelic smile dropped, replaced instantly by a wicked, satisfied smirk. He pulled out his phone, quickly drafting a text to his best friends. Operation, wife up the enemy, is a go. Saw William's thighs today. I am going to marry that man. The following afternoon, the ultra-exclusive, ridiculously expensive Galleria Royale shopping mall was completely shut down on the entire second floor. Lucas was a man of his word. When he promised to take his fragile little brother shopping to help him recover from studying too hard, he meant it. He had essentially rented out the entire high-end wing. 6 of Lucas's heavily armed guards carried dozens of designer shopping bags, trailing behind the twins like heavily tattooed pack mules. Leo was in his element. He was dressed in an oversized, fluffy white cashmere sweater that fell off one shoulder, tight white jeans, and a halo of pure, unadulterated innocence. He looked like an angel that had just fallen from the sky to bless a Gucci store. Oh, Luke, you really didn't have to buy me the diamond tennis bracelet, Leo said, his voice soft and sweet, looking up at his towering brother with wide, grateful eyes. Nonsense, Lucas grunted, adjusting his black leather jacket. You looked at it for more than 3 seconds. It's yours. Besides, it distracts you from the ugly realities of the world. Now, do you want to go to Cartier or? Lucas stopped dead in his tracks. Coming out of the bespoke Italian tailor shop at the end of the promenade was none other than William, accompanied by Julian and 4 of his own guards. William was there for a very specific reason. He needed to order 6 new pairs of tailored trousers because he had burned the ones from yesterday in a fire pit out of sheer, unadulterated shame. The moment the 2 rival alphas locked eyes, the temperature in the mall plummeted. The air grew heavy and thick. Lucas's dark, violent alpha aura instantly flared, practically cracking the marble floors. William's own terrifying, icy aura rose to meet it. The guards on both sides instantly dropped their shopping bags and reached into their coats, hands gripping the handles of their hidden firearms. William, Lucas growled, his voice vibrating with lethal intent. William stopped, his jaw clenching. His eyes flicked from Lucas to the smaller figure standing next to him. His brain completely stalled. There he was, the absolute menace. The creature who had straddled him, demanded his hand in marriage, and aggressively pantsed him in front of his entire security detail not even 24 hours ago. William felt a phantom draft around his ankles just looking at him. But before William could even open his mouth, Leo sprang into action. Gasp! Leo let out a tiny, high-pitched squeak of pure terror. He dropped the small, velvet jewelry box he was holding, stumbled backward, and practically dove behind Lucas's broad back. He clutched fistfuls of Lucas's leather jacket, his entire body visibly trembling. Instantly, the scent of sweet vanilla flooded the corridor, but this time, it was laced with the sharp, sour tang of Omega fear. Luke. Leo whimpered, his voice cracking perfectly. He peeked out from behind his brother, his eyes wide and brimming with unshed, crocodile tears. Who is that scary man? His eyes are so mean. William's jaw physically dropped. Julian, standing just behind William, let out a choked, wheezing sound and had to grab the wall for support. His eyes were the size of dinner plates. Was he serious? William thought, his mind racing. Is this a hallucination? Is this the same boy who looked me dead in the eye and asked me to rail him into next Tuesday? Lucas instantly shifted, throwing a massive, protective arm in front of his trembling brother, shielding him from William's view. Close your eyes, Leo. Don't look at him, Lucas said, his voice turning incredibly soft for his brother before he snapped his furious glare back to William. Call off your aura, William. Right now. William just stared, utterly speechless. He looked at Lucas, then at the trembling white sweater hiding behind him. Lucas. William started, his voice strained. Do you have any idea what you're? Shut your mouth. Lucas barked, taking a threatening step forward. We have a treaty. Family is off limits. I am not going to fight you today, William. Not here. I will not expose my innocent brother to your filthy, violent existence. You are terrifying him. Terrifying him. William's eye twitched violently. He ripped my belt off. He rated my thighs on a scale of 1 to 10. William opened his mouth to scream the truth, to yell at Lucas that his innocent brother was a degenerate, shameless, predatory little gremlin. But the words died in his throat. How could he possibly explain it? Hey Lucas, your angelic brother broke into my mansion, sat on my lap, begged for gunplay, and stripped me down to my silk boxers in front of my employees. If he said that, Lucas wouldn't believe him. And if Lucas did believe him, he would shoot William in the face for letting it happen. It was a lose-lose situation. Julian leaned in close to William's ear, whispering frantically. Boss, do not say a word. The kid is a psychopath. He deserves an Academy Award. Look at him. He's literally crying. It was true. A single, perfect, crystalline tear had rolled down Leo's cheek as he clung to Lucas. I want to go home, Luke, Leo sobbed quietly, burying his face into Lucas's spine. He's looking at me like he wants to eat me. William's face turned a violent shade of crimson. I want to throw you into the sun. It's okay, Angel, I've got you, Lucas cooed, rubbing Leo's hair soothingly. Lucas glared at William with the heat of 1,000 suns. You mark my words, William. You stay far away from my family. If you even breathe in Leo's direction again, the treaty is burned, and I will level your entire estate. William stood there, completely paralyzed by the sheer, unadulterated audacity of the Omega. He was trapped in a nightmare. Come on, sweetie, Lucas said, his tone softening dramatically as he turned away from his rival. Let's get out of here. The air is polluted. We'll go to the Cartier store, buy you whatever you want, and get some ice cream. Oh okay, big brother, Leo sniffled softly, keeping his head down as he let Lucas guide him away. The guards picked up the bags, throwing dirty looks at William's men as they turned to leave. William stood frozen in the middle of the corridor, his chest heaving with unexpressed rage, watching his worst enemy walk away. As Lucas and his entourage walked down the concourse, Lucas kept his eyes fixed forward, constantly scanning for threats, firmly shielding his brother. But Leo casually looked back over his shoulder. The moment Lucas couldn't see his face, the trembling, terrified Angel completely vanished. Leo's tears stopped instantly. A wicked, devastatingly shameless smirk spread across his lips. He locked eyes with William. Slowly, deliberately, Leo raised a hand to his lips, kissed his fingertips, and blew a dramatic, theatrical flying kiss right at the Mafia boss. Then, he blatantly dropped his gaze to William's waistline, bit his lower lip, and gave a slow, exaggerated wink. William literally choked on his own spit. Before William could react, Leo seamlessly whipped his head back around, burying his face into Lucas's arm and letting out another pathetic, fake little whimper. Walk faster, Luke, he's so scary. I know, Angel, I know, Lucas's protective voice echoed down the hall. William stood perfectly still in the empty corridor. His hands were shaking. His brain was actively trying to leap out of his skull. Julian slowly patted his boss on the shoulder. Boss, Julian asked gently, do you need me to call the company doctor? Or perhaps a priest? Julian, William whispered, his voice hollow, staring blankly at the spot where the Omega had just been. I am going to need a very large drink. And a padlock for my belt. For the next 48 hours, the most feared Mafia compound on the East Coast was operating under a new, highly classified security protocol. Julian had officially dubbed it, Operation Anti-Gremlin. William had doubled the perimeter guards. He had updated the biometric locks. But more importantly, he had fundamentally changed his wardrobe. He was currently wearing a pair of tactical trousers secured not only by a heavy-duty leather belt, but by a belt that featured a literal, steel combination lock. Boss, the shipment from Naples arrived safely, Julian said, standing in William's private, cavernous master suite. He paused, looking at his boss's waistline. And, I see the new belts arrived as well. Not a word, Julian, William growled from the edge of his bed, rubbing his face in exhaustion. If I have to sleep in steel-reinforced suspenders to keep my dignity intact, I will. That creature is a psychological weapon. Lucas trained him to break my mind. I don't think Lucas knows his brother is a feral succubus, boss, Julian pointed out delicately. At the mall, the kid looked like he was auditioning for a role as a Victorian orphan. He winked at me, Julian. William roared, throwing his hands in the air. He blew me a kiss while crying onto Lucas's shoulder. He is a demon sent from hell wearing my enemy's face. William stood up, pinching the bridge of his nose. I need a shower. I feel completely contaminated just thinking about him. Tell the guards if a red sports car comes within a mile of this property, they have authorization to use rocket launchers. Understood, boss. Julian bowed and exited the master suite, locking the heavy doors behind him. William sighed, finally feeling a fraction of peace. He stripped off his heavily secured clothes, stepped into his massive, glass-enclosed walk-in shower, and let the scalding hot water wash away the stress of being aggressively pursued by an unhinged Omega. 20 minutes later, William turned off the water. He ran a hand through his damp, dark hair, feeling somewhat human again. He grabbed a plush, white Egyptian cotton towel, wrapped it securely around his waist, and stepped out of the steaming bathroom into his bedroom. You know, I always suspected the V-line would be insane, but seeing it in person. God, I could eat off those abs. William froze. His blood turned to absolute ice. Sitting in the exact center of William's massive, California king-sized bed was Leo. But Leo wasn't wearing his fluffy white innocent sweater. Oh, no. Leo had somehow raided William's closet. The Omega was wearing nothing but one of William's own custom-tailored, black silk dress shirts. It was obscenely large on him, slipping dangerously off one pale shoulder and barely covering the tops of his thighs. His legs were crossed elegantly, and he was casually eating a green apple. The room reeked of expensive, sweet vanilla and wild strawberries, entirely overpowering William's own alpha scent. How? William's voice was barely a whisper. He clutched his towel with a death grip, his knuckles turning white. How are you in here? The doors are locked. The perimeter is armed. I brought the gate guards a dozen glazed donuts and told them I was your secret mafia wife here for a booty call, Leo chirped, taking a bite of the apple. They were very supportive. One of them actually cried and said he was happy you finally found love. They gave me the master passcode. I am going to execute them, William said blankly. I am going to execute every single man on my payroll. Don't change the subject, Daddy, we have limited time before my brother tracks my phone, Leo purred, tossing the half-eaten apple onto the nightstand. He leaned back on his hands, arching his back slightly, a wicked, ravenous look in his eyes. He blatantly let his gaze travel down William's broad, dripping wet chest, lingering right at the knot of the towel. Are you going to drop the towel, or do I have to come over there and rip it off with my teeth? If you come within 5 feet of me, I will throw you through that reinforced window, William threatened, backing up against the bathroom door, desperately trying to project his terrifying alpha aura. It failed completely. Leo just let out a breathy, delighted laugh. Oh, I love it when you talk dirty, Leo said, biting his lower lip. Throw me against the glass, William. Do it. Pin my hands above my head and wreck me right here. I want you to ruin my life so hard I forget my own name. I want to walk with a limp for a week. William's face flushed a violent, dark red. He was a 32-year-old mafia don. He had tortured men. He had built an empire on blood. But he was entirely unequipped for this level of sheer, shameless degeneracy. You are sick, William shouted, his voice cracking slightly. You are completely out of your mind. I hate your brother. Every time I look at your face, I see Lucas. Then hit it from the back. Leo suggested cheerfully, clapping his hands together. Problem solved. You don't have to look at my face, you can just look at this phenomenal ass, and we both win. I am going to have an aneurysm, William wheezed, sliding down the bathroom door slightly. This is how I die. Not by a bullet, but by a sexually frustrated gremlin in a silk shirt. Don't be dramatic, sweetheart, Leo cooed, sliding off the bed. He began walking slowly toward William, his bare feet patting softly against the plush carpet. The oversized black shirt rode up dangerously high. You know you want it. Your alpha instincts are probably screaming right now. I smell amazing, don't I? Sweet, ripe, and ready for you to absolutely destroy. William closed his eyes tightly, turning his head away. Get back. I swear to God, Leo. Get back. Or what? Leo whispered. He stopped just inches away from William. The heat radiating off the Omega was intoxicating, a blatant invitation. Leo reached into his pocket and pulled out something sparkling. Look what Luke bought me yesterday to comfort me after you terrified, me. William opened one eye. Leo was holding the diamond Cartier tennis bracelet Lucas had bought him at the mall. It's very sturdy, Leo purred, trailing a finger down William's wet chest, watching the alpha violently shiver in response. I was thinking, we could use it to tie my wrists to your headboard. Or, if you're feeling submissive today, I can tie yours. I'm very versatile, Willie. Stop calling me Willie. William practically screeched, aggressively swatting Leo's hand away and pulling his towel tighter. I am the boss of the largest syndicate in the country. I am a god of death. You're a god of death who looks really cute clutching his little bath towel, Leo teased, stepping even closer, pressing his soft body against William's rigid, muscular one. Come on, just one kiss. Let me ride you once. If you don't like it, I'll never bother you again. But if you do like it, I'll let you choke me a little. William was suffocating. The pheromones were completely overwhelming his senses. The sheer, terrifying juxtaposition of Lucas's identical face spouting the filthiest, most 18-plus lines he had ever heard was breaking his reality. Suddenly, the heavy bedroom doors burst open. Boss! Perimeter breach, Julian shouted, storming into the room with his weapon drawn. Julian stopped dead in his tracks. The scene before him was like a Renaissance painting of absolute disaster. The most terrifying alpha in the city was pinned against the bathroom door, desperately clutching a towel to his chest like a frightened maiden, looking absolutely traumatized. Meanwhile, his rival's twin brother, wearing only William's dress shirt, had him completely cornered, holding a diamond bracelet like a pair of handcuffs. Silence descended upon the room. Julian slowly lowered his gun. He looked at William. He looked at Leo. He looked at the towel. Leo didn't even flinch. He just looked over his shoulder at Julian, entirely unbothered. Do you mind, Julian? We were just getting to the heavy petting phase. And honestly, I'm not really into three ways unless the third guy pays for dinner. Julian's eye twitched. He carefully holstered his weapon. My apologies, Julian said in a perfectly deadpan, professional voice. He slowly began to back out of the room. I will inform the guards that the screaming coming from the master bedroom is entirely consensual. Have a productive evening, boss. Julian, do not leave me alone with him. William screamed, sheer panic in his voice as he tried to reach out, only for his towel to slip an inch, forcing him to grab it again. Arrest him. Shoot him. Do something. I'm sorry, boss, but family is off limits, Julian said, his hand on the doorknob, completely abandoning his leader to his fate. And I don't want to get in the way of true love. I'll order you some Gatorade. You're going to need the electrolytes. Click. Julian shut the door and locked it from the outside. William stared at the closed door in absolute horror. He had been betrayed. He was entirely alone. Leo turned back to William, a slow, predatory, devastating smirk spreading across his face. He reached up, casually unbuttoning the top 3 buttons of the black silk shirt, exposing a tantalizing amount of pale skin. Well, Leo whispered, stepping right between William's legs, looking up through his eyelashes. Looks like it's just you, me, and this towel. So, who's taking it off? You, or me? Leo reached out, his small, delicate fingers grazing the knot of the Egyptian cotton towel at William's waist. He expected William to blush. He expected him to stutter, or maybe even finally cave to the undeniable chemistry crackling in the room. Instead, the temperature in the room plummeted to absolute zero. William didn't blush. He didn't stutter. Something deep inside the Mafia boss, the primal, ruthless, utterly dominant alpha that ruled the criminal underworld, finally snapped. He had been mocked, humiliated, and pushed far past his limit by a bratty Omega wearing the face of his mortal enemy. Playtime was officially over. William's eyes darkened to a terrifying, pitch-black void. Without warning, he released his alpha pheromones. It wasn't the subtle, intimidating aura he used in boardrooms. This was raw, concentrated, suffocating alpha wrath. The scent of bitter winter frost, burning gunpowder, and crushed pine needles exploded into the room. It was so heavy, so physically oppressive, that the air itself felt like it had turned to lead. Leo froze. His hand dropped from the towel. Biologically, an Omega's body is wired to submit to an enraged alpha. No amount of sass, confidence, or designer clothes could protect Leo from millions of years of evolution. The crushing weight of William's aura slammed into him like a freight train. Leo gasped, his hands flying to his own throat. He stumbled backward, his knees buckling under the sheer, terrifying pressure. The sweet scent of vanilla and strawberries instantly soured into the sharp scent of pure, unadulterated omega panic. He couldn't breathe. His lungs refused to take in air. Will. Leo choked out, tears springing to his eyes, real tears of physiological terror. He took another shaky step back, his entire body trembling violently. He raised his hands in a gesture of absolute surrender. He couldn't fight it. He gave up. I tolerated your games because of the treaty. William's voice was no longer a frustrated yell. It was a low, demonic rumble that vibrated the glass of the shower behind him. But you have forgotten what I am. I am not a toy. I am a monster. William didn't wait for Julian. He didn't call the guards. He stalked forward, completely ignoring the fact that he was still only wearing a towel, and grabbed Leo roughly by the upper arm. Ow. William, please, you're hurting me. Leo whimpered, stumbling as William practically dragged him out of the master suite. William didn't listen. His grip was an iron vice. He hauled the terrified Omega down the grand marble staircase, past the shocked, statuesque guards, and straight through the massive front foyer. He shoved the heavy mahogany front doors open with one hand and marched out onto the cold stone portico. With a powerful heave, William threw Leo forward. Leo stumbled and fell hard onto his hands and knees on the cold, unforgiving driveway, the oversized black dress shirt slipping entirely off his shoulder. He scraped his palms, gasping as the freezing night air hit his skin. He slowly looked up. William stood at the top of the stairs, a terrifying titan of muscle, scars, and absolute authority, looking down at Leo with eyes devoid of any warmth. Leo's bottom lip quivered. The bratty, shameless facade was completely shattered. He knelt there, looking incredibly small and fragile. His big, doe-like eyes filled to the brim with watery tears. Why? Leo whispered, his voice cracking painfully. I just love you. I love you so much. Why won't you just accept me, William? William looked at the tears streaming down the boy's face. For a fraction of a second, his alpha instinct screamed at him to comfort the weeping Omega. But then, he looked at the shape of Leo's jaw. The curve of his nose. The dark hair. It was Lucas. I will never love you, William said, his voice as cold and hard as a diamond. He delivered the words deliberately, ensuring they cut deep. Look at yourself. You are a nuisance. You are a delusional brat. But worse than that, you wear the face of the man I despise most in this world. Every time I look at you, I feel physically sick. I do not want your love. I do not want you. Never come near me again. Leo flinched as if he had been physically struck. The tear that fell this time wasn't for show. It wasn't crocodile tears to manipulate his brother. It was a hot, agonizing tear of genuine heartbreak. It sliced down his cheek, followed rapidly by another. His chest heaved with a quiet, devastating sob. He looked at William, his heart shattering into a million pieces, but beneath the pain, a stubborn, fiery spark remained. I will prove it, Leo sobbed, wiping his eyes fiercely with the back of his scraped hand, smudging his mascara. You think I'm just a joke. But I will prove to you that my love is true. Even if it kills me. William's expression remained entirely blank. He simply turned around and walked back inside, the heavy doors slamming shut with a resounding boom that echoed through the night. Standing in his grand foyer, William let out a long, ragged breath, pulling his aura back. A sudden, uncomfortable twinge of guilt twisted in his chest. The boy had looked so pathetic, so broken kneeling on the concrete. William aggressively pushed the guilt down, locking it away. It's good, he told himself firmly. He is an Omega playing in a dangerous world. He needs to know his limits. I did him a favor. 20 minutes later, the red sports car careened wildly into the driveway of Lucas's heavily fortified estate. Leo didn't even bother parking it properly in the garage. He slammed the brakes, threw the door open, and ran toward the mansion. He was a complete mess. He was shivering violently in the oversized dress shirt, his knees were bruised, his palms were bleeding, and his face was entirely red and blotchy from hysterical crying. He burst through the front doors. Young Master Leo. Maria, the head maid, gasped, dropping a silver polishing cloth in sheer horror as she saw the state of him. Leo didn't answer. He just let out a heartbroken wail, sprinted past her up the grand staircase, ran into his luxurious bedroom, and slammed the heavy door, locking it with a loud click. Maria didn't hesitate for a single second. She practically flew to the secure landline and punched in the direct, emergency number for the boss. Across the city, Lucas was in the middle of a highly tense sit-down with two rival cartel leaders. The atmosphere was deadly. Guns were on the table. His private phone rang. Lucas held up a hand, silencing the cartel bosses, and answered it. "Speak, boss." Maria's panicked voice came through the receiver. "It's Leo. He just came home, he's in William's dress shirt, he's bleeding, and he's crying hysterically. He locked himself in his room." The blood completely drained from Lucas's face. He stood up so fast his heavy oak chair crashed backward onto the floor. Without saying a single word to the cartel leaders, Lucas drew his weapon, turned, and sprinted out of the warehouse. He drove his armored SUV back to his estate like a madman, breaking every single traffic law in the city. He arrived in record time, storming up the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached Leo's door and hammered his massive fist against the wood. "Leo, Angel, it's me, it's Lucas. Open the door," Lucas shouted, his voice thick with panic and rage. Inside, there was only the sound of muffled, heartbreaking sobs. "No," Leo cried from the other side. "Go away. I'm hideous." "Leo, please," Lucas pleaded, his voice cracking. The ruthless Mafia boss leaned his forehead against the heavy wood, completely terrified for his brother. "Please, baby. Open the door. Let me see you. If someone hurt you, I swear on our mother's grave I will peel their skin off piece by piece. Just open the door." For a long minute, there was silence. Then, the lock clicked. The door opened slowly. Leo stood there, clutching the oversized black shirt around his shivering frame. His eyes were completely bloodshot, his face wet with tears, and his scraped palms hung limply at his sides. Lucas let out a choked breath and immediately dropped to his knees, pulling Leo into his massive, protective chest. He wrapped his arms around his trembling brother, burying his face in Leo's hair. I've got you, Lucas murmured fiercely, his alpha aura projecting pure, overwhelming comfort and protection. He gently took Leo's scraped hands, looking at the blood with murderous intent. "Angel, tell me, who did this? Why are you wearing a man's shirt? Who made you cry?" Leo hiccuped, burying his face into Lucas's shoulder. He couldn't tell the truth. If he told Lucas that William had done this, Lucas would start a war that would end with one of them dead. Leo sobbed, his brilliant, manipulative mind working even through his genuine heartbreak. He looked up at Lucas with huge, tragic eyes. "I confessed to a boy at college today, Luke. The one I've liked for months." Lucas's jaw clenched tightly. "And he laughed at me," Leo wailed, fresh tears spilling over. "He pushed me down in the parking lot. And he said I was just a spoiled, useless omega who looks like a villain. He said no one would ever love a freak like me." The silence in the hallway was deafening. The air around Lucas literally began to crackle with an aura so dark, so violent, that the guards standing at the bottom of the stairs had to step back. "He said what?" Lucas whispered, his voice dangerously soft, his eyes turning to black pits of pure murder. "He hates me, Luke." Leo cried, hugging his brother tighter. Lucas gently picked Leo up in his arms like a bridal carrying him over to the plush bed. He laid his brother down softly, pulling the thick duvet over him to warm him up. "Rest, my sweet angel," Lucas said, pressing a gentle kiss to Leo's forehead. His voice was soothing, but his eyes promised unimaginable violence. "Do not cry over a peasant. Tomorrow, you will give me his name. And I promise you, he will never laugh again." The grand, dimly lit bedroom of the Omega felt less like a sanctuary and more like a mourning chamber. The heavy silk curtains were drawn tight against the moonlight. Lucas sat on the edge of Leo's massive, plush bed. The ruthless cartel leader, a man who had ordered executions before breakfast, was currently holding a small silver basin of warm water and a pristine white washcloth. His massive, scarred hands that had broken bones and wielded heavy artillery, were moving with agonizing slowness and absolute gentleness. "This might sting a little, Angel," Lucas murmured, his voice softer than velvet. Leo sat propped up against the velvet headboard, still drowning in the oversized black dress shirt. He extended his trembling hands. His palms were scraped raw and bleeding from where he had caught himself on William's unforgiving concrete driveway. Lucas carefully dabbed the damp cloth against the torn skin. He didn't miss the way Leo sharply inhaled, his breath shuddering. Every tiny flinch from his younger brother sent a violent, homicidal tremor through the alpha's chest. "I'm sorry," Leo whimpered, fresh tears welling up in his large, doe-like eyes. The emotional exhaustion was finally catching up to him. His chest ached terribly. William's freezing, disgusted eyes kept flashing in his mind. "I will never love you. Do not apologize to me," Lucas said firmly, his jaw ticking as he reached for a tube of antiseptic cream. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You were brave. You put your heart out there. It is not your fault that the world is full of ignorant, worthless cowards." Lucas gently applied the cream, then began wrapping Leo's small hands in clean white bandages. "Now," Lucas said, his voice dropping an octave, slipping dangerously close to his terrifying Mafia boss tone. "Give me his name." Leo's breath hitched. He looked away, staring at the intricate patterns on his heavy duvet. "No, Luke. Leo. Look at me," Lucas commanded gently, but with undeniable alpha authority. When Leo's tear-filled eyes met his, Lucas's expression was agonizingly serious. "This boy shoved you onto the pavement. He made you bleed. He made you cry. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets to do that and walk away breathing. Give me his name, what college he attends, and his license plate number. I will handle the rest." "You can't," Leo cried out, pure panic slicing through his heartbreak. If Lucas started digging, he would find out Leo had been nowhere near the college campus. He would find out about William. "Luke, please, promise me you won't go after him. Why are you protecting him?" Lucas demanded, his frustration bleeding through. "After what he did to you. Because if you hurt him, it just proves him right." Leo lied desperately, his brilliant mind weaving a tragic narrative to keep his brother at bay. He said I was just a spoiled Mafia prince. He said I hide behind my big, terrifying brother and that I'm a villain just like you. If you go and break his legs, you're just proving him right. You'll make me the monster he thinks I am." Lucas froze. The antiseptic tube in his hand crunched slightly under his tightening grip. "Is that what he said?" Lucas whispered, the sheer hurt on his brother's behalf making his voice crack. "That you are a villain." "Yes," Leo sobbed, the tears falling thick and fast now, because the core of the lie was the painful truth. William did see him as a villain. William saw Lucas's face, and he hated it. "Luke, do you hate our face?" Lucas looked completely bewildered. "What? We look exactly the same," Leo sniffled, his lower lip trembling violently. "When you look in the mirror, do you see a monster?" Because he looked at me, and that's all he saw. He just saw a monster. "Oh, my sweet boy," Lucas breathed out. He abandoned the medical supplies entirely, leaning forward and wrapping his massive arms around his trembling twin. He pulled Leo against his chest, burying his face in his brother's dark hair. "No, no, no, no. Listen to me, Leo." Lucas pulled back just enough to frame Leo's tear-stained face with his large hands. He looked deeply into the eyes that mirrored his own. "We may share the same face, but you are the light in this family," Lucas said fiercely, his voice vibrating with absolute conviction. "I am the monster. I absorb the darkness so you don't have to. When I look at you, I don't see a villain. I see the only pure, beautiful thing left in my life. Anyone who looks at you and sees anything less than an angel is entirely blind." Leo closed his eyes, letting out a broken sob. He wrapped his newly bandaged hands around Lucas's wrists, clinging to his brother. The guilt of lying to Lucas warred with the devastating heartbreak of William's rejection. "I just wanted him to love me," Leo whispered into the quiet room. "I know," Lucas soothed, gently rocking him. "And one day, you will find an alpha who deserves you. An alpha who will drop to his knees and worship the ground you walk on. But this boy, he is dead to me. If you ask me to stay away from him, I will. But only because you asked." "Thank you, Luke," Leo breathed, resting his heavy head on his brother's shoulder. Lucas slowly pulled away, his eyes catching on the oversized garment swallowing his brother's frame. His brow furrowed. "Where did you get this shirt, Leo?" "This is pure silk. Custom tailoring. It smells strangely familiar." Leo's heart stopped. William's scent was still clinging to the fabric. Faint, but there. "It's Toby's," Leo blurted out, his pulse pounding in his ears. I was shivering so badly after he pushed me. Toby found me crying in the parking lot. My sweater was ruined, so Toby gave me his father's shirt from his car to keep me warm on the drive home. Lucas's eyes softened with gratitude. Toby is a good friend. I will send his family a case of imported wine tomorrow as a thank you. Lucas stood up, gently tucking the thick duvet tightly around Leo's shoulders. He leaned down and pressed a long, lingering kiss to his brother's forehead. Sleep now, Angel, Lucas said softly. You are safe here. No one will ever hurt you in this house. I love you. I love you too, Luke, Leo whispered. Lucas turned out the bedside lamp, leaving only the soft glow of the moon filtering through the curtains, and quietly exited the room, pulling the heavy door shut behind him. The moment the lock clicked into place, the room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Leo lay completely still for a few minutes, listening to his brother's heavy footsteps fade down the hallway. Once he was sure he was alone, the brave facade he had constructed finally crumbled completely. Leo curled into a tight ball under the heavy covers. He reached down and pulled the collar of William's black silk dress shirt up over his nose. He buried his face into the fabric. Beneath the scent of his own distress, he could still smell him. The sharp, bitter scent of winter frost. The dangerous tang of burning gunpowder. The crisp, clean smell of crushed pine needles. It was William's alpha scent. It was the scent that had utterly completely terrified him hours ago, but now, it was the only thing holding him together. Leo squeezed his eyes shut, fresh tears soaking into the expensive silk collar. William's words echoed in his mind, sharp as shattered glass. You wear the face of the man I despise most in this world. Every time I look at you, I feel physically sick. I'm not Lucas, Leo whispered into the empty room, his voice hoarse and broken. He clutched the fabric of the shirt with his bandaged hands, pressing it against his aching heart. I'm not him. He had played games. He had been a brat. He had pushed boundaries because he thought it was a fun, thrilling chase. He thought William was just playing hard to get, constrained by the Mafia rivalry. He hadn't realized how deeply, truly, and profoundly William hated his brother. He hadn't realized that the face he had been born with was an impenetrable wall between him and the man he loved. But as Leo lay there, breathing in the scent of winter and gunpowder, the profound sadness slowly, very slowly, began to crystallize into something else. Stubbornness. Leo wiped his wet cheeks against the silk sleeve. He took a deep, shuddering breath. I told you I would prove it, Leo whispered to the darkness, his voice losing its tremor, replaced by a quiet, fierce determination. I don't care if you hate my face. I'll make you look at me until you don't see Lucas anymore. I'll make you see me. He pulled the shirt tighter around his body, finally closing his exhausted eyes. The gremlin hadn't been defeated. He had just learned that this wasn't a game anymore. This was war, and Leo was prepared to win it, even if it broke them both. For an entire week following the Master Suite incident, William's Mafia compound was on a state of absolute, DEFCON 1 lockdown. William was not doing well. The alpha boss, who normally slept like a rock after a long day of organized crime, was suffering from acute, severe paranoia. Every time he opened a closet, he braced himself for a half-naked Omega to jump out. Every time he smelled anything remotely sweet, a pastry, a vanilla-scented air freshener, a passing employee's perfume, his heart rate spiked, and his hand instinctively shot to the steel combination lock on his belt. Julian, William said, his voice completely deadpan as he stared blankly at the ceiling of his office. Did you sweep the ventilation shafts? Julian, who was standing perfectly straight by the door holding a clipboard, sighed. A very long, very exhausted sigh. Yes, boss. We swept the ventilation shafts. We checked the plumbing. We ran thermal imaging on the roof. We even searched the grand piano in the ballroom, Julian read off his list, adjusting his tie. I assure you, the Lucas lookalike is not hiding inside the baby grand. William rubbed his temples violently. I can still smell him, Julian. It's in the carpets. It's in my clothes. My favorite black silk shirt is missing, and I know exactly who took it. He's a phantom. A feral, deeply perverted phantom. With respect, boss, it has been 7 days, Julian pointed out smoothly. The boy hasn't been seen anywhere near the estate. Lucas's men have been quiet. Perhaps your aggressive rejection finally got through to him. William felt a sudden, unwelcome twinge in his chest at the word rejection. The image of Leo kneeling on the cold concrete, crying real tears with his palms scraped and bleeding, flashed vividly in his mind. William aggressively shoved the memory into a mental vault and locked it. Good. He finally learned his place, William grunted, standing up from his desk and grabbing his tailored trench coat. I have a headache. I'm going out for a coffee. Alone. Boss, are you sure? The perimeter. If anyone follows me, I will shoot them myself, William snapped. He needed civilian air. He needed a place where the scent of gunpowder and the haunting memory of vanilla didn't exist. 30 minutes later, William walked into Le Petit Bijou, a quiet, highly exclusive, and obscenely expensive French patisserie nestled in the arts district of the city. It was William's secret sanctuary. No mafia business happened here. It just smelled like roasted coffee beans, fresh butter, and expensive pastries. William ordered a black espresso, tipped the terrified barista $100 bill, and turned to find his usual corner booth by the window. He stopped dead in his tracks. The espresso cup trembled in his hand, threatening to spill over the saucer. Sitting in his booth, was the Phantom himself. But it wasn't the leather-clad, sheer shirt-wearing gremlin from the mansion. Leo was sitting quietly by the window, bathed in the soft afternoon sunlight. He was wearing a fluffy, oversized pastel pink sweater that looked softer than a cloud. His dark hair was styled softly, falling gently over his forehead. And, most shockingly of all, he was wearing a pair of delicate, round, gold-rimmed reading glasses. He looked entirely, breathtakingly ethereal. He didn't look like a mafia boss's brother. He looked like an innocent college student studying for a literature exam. William's brain completely short-circuited. Is this a trap? Is he armed? Is he going to scream that I'm his baby daddy in front of the local aristocracy? William considered turning around and walking out. But he was an alpha. A don. He absolutely refused to be chased out of his favorite bakery by a boy in a pink sweater. Squaring his shoulders, William marched over to the booth and slammed his espresso cup down on the table. What game are you playing now? William demanded, his voice a low, dangerous hiss meant only for Leo's ears. How did you find me? Did you track my car? Leo slowly turned a page of his book. He didn't jump. He didn't launch himself into William's lap. He simply looked up through the gold-rimmed glasses, his expression entirely calm and politely detached. Hello, William, Leo said softly. His voice lacked its usual dramatic, bratty edge. It was smooth, quiet, and incredibly melodic. I didn't track you. I come here every Thursday for the strawberry tart. It's my favorite. William stared at him. He scanned the perimeter, looking for hidden cameras, Lucas's guards, or any sign of a trap. You're lying. You're here to harass me. I'm really not, Leo said, taking a delicate sip from a porcelain teacup. He gestured casually to the empty seat across from him. You look tense. Your vein is popping out. You can sit down if you want. I promise I won't strip you down to your boxers today. I left my crowbar at home. William's eye twitched. Against his better judgment, and entirely to avoid drawing attention from the other wealthy patrons, he slid into the booth opposite Leo. He sat rigidly, his alpha aura completely contained but his muscles coiled like a spring. Why are you wearing glasses? William blurted out. Lucas had 20/20 vision. Lucas would rather die than wear pastel pink. The cognitive dissonance was physically hurting William's brain. They're reading glasses, Leo replied smoothly, setting his book down. He rested his chin on his hands, looking directly into William's eyes. Though they do have an added benefit. What benefit? William asked suspiciously. Leo's face remained completely angelic, his expression perfectly innocent. They help me see in high definition exactly how thick your thighs look in those slacks when you walk towards me. Truly, William, the engineering of your trousers is a modern marvel. They are holding on for dear life. William violently choked on his espresso. He coughed into his napkin, his face turning a brilliant shade of crimson, while Leo calmly handed him a glass of water. You, William wheezed, glaring at the Omega. You are completely unhinged. You look like a librarian but you speak like a sailor on shore leave. I am a complex creature, Daddy, Leo smiled, a tiny, genuine, breathtaking smile that absolutely did not belong on Lucas's face. And I told you I wasn't going to give up. You said you couldn't stand looking at me because you only see Lucas. So, I decided to help you out. Leo gestured to his own outfit. Lucas hates pink. Lucas doesn't need glasses. Lucas doesn't read French poetry. I'm showing you that I am not him. We might share the same jawline, William, but my mouth does entirely different things. Want a demonstration? No. William said immediately, his heart hammering against his ribs in a completely un-Mafia-like way. The sheer, shameless whiplash of Leo's personality was intoxicating. Keep your voice down. I'm perfectly quiet, Leo murmured, leaning forward across the small table. The scent of sweet vanilla and wild strawberries wafted over, completely unlaced by fear or anger. It was a warm, inviting, dangerously seductive scent. You're the one who is shouting. You know, you're very cute when you're flustered. It makes me want to pin you against the wall of the bakery bathroom. William grabbed the edge of the table. I am going to have you arrested for public indecency. You haven't even done anything, and I'm still going to have you arrested. Handcuffs again. We really have a theme going, Leo hummed delightedly. William took a deep breath, trying to summon his cold, ruthless exterior. He looked at Leo's hands, resting on the table. He noticed the stark white bandages wrapped around both of Leo's palms. William's gaze snapped to the bandages, and that sharp, uncomfortable twist of guilt stabbed him in the chest again. Your hands, William said, his voice dropping its anger, suddenly sounding quiet and strained. Are they? Did you go to a doctor? Leo looked down at his bandaged palms, then back up at William. For a brief second, the shameless flirtation vanished, replaced by a flash of the raw vulnerability William had seen on the driveway. Lucas patched them up, Leo said softly. He was very angry. He asked me who did it. William stiffened. And what did you tell him? I lied, Leo said simply, looking right into William's dark eyes. I told him a boy at college pushed me. If I told him the truth, he would have declared war on you. And as much as I love watching you sweat, William, I don't want you to die. William sat in stunned silence. The absolute loyalty, the quick thinking, the sheer protective instinct this Omega had just displayed, it shattered every preconceived notion William had. Leo wasn't just a spoiled brat playing games. He was actively shielding William from his own brother's wrath, even after William had thrown him onto the concrete. Why would you protect me? William asked, his voice barely a whisper. Leo offered a small, somewhat sad smile. He reached across the table, his bandaged hand hovering just an inch from William's, but he deliberately didn't touch him, respecting the boundary. Because I love you, you giant idiot, Leo whispered gently. I'm crazy, I'm shameless, and I have no filter. But I meant what I said. I'm going to make you see me. Even if I have to buy out this entire bakery and force feed you croissants until you do. Leo slowly pulled his hand back, stood up from the booth, and grabbed his book. He looked down at the paralyzed Mafia boss. Enjoy your coffee, Willie, Leo winked, the gremlin returning in full force. Think about my mouth. William sat entirely frozen as he watched the Omega in the pink sweater sashay out of the patisserie. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully. William looked down at his espresso, then at the empty seat across from him. Over the next week, the city's underground kingpin realized he had a shadow. A very fragrant, outrageously dressed, infuriatingly gorgeous shadow. Leo had completely changed his tactics. He kept the promise he made in the patisserie, he didn't approach William. He didn't launch himself into William's lap, he didn't break into his mansion, and he didn't scream marriage proposals at the gate guards. Instead, Leo simply existed exactly where William happened to be. It was psychological warfare of the highest caliber. When William went to his exclusive, alpha-only private gym on Tuesday morning, Leo was suddenly there as a guest. William tried to bench press while actively trying not to look at the Omega doing perfectly timed, agonizingly slow squats in the mirror opposite him, wearing shorts that were practically a human rights violation. William ended up dropping a 40-pound dumbbell on his own foot. Leo didn't say a word, just smirked and took a sip from his water bottle. When William attended a high-end art auction on Thursday evening, Leo was seated 3 rows ahead of him. Leo wore a backless velvet suit that scooped so low William could see the delicate dip of his spine. Every time William tried to bid on a painting, Leo would casually stretch, arching his back, completely wiping William's brain of all numbers. By Saturday night, William was a mess. The scent of vanilla and wild strawberries was permanently etched into his brain. He found himself subconsciously looking for a flash of pastel or a pair of leather pants every time he entered a room. He was getting used to Leo. Worse, his inner alpha was starting to actively craving Leo. "Julian, pour me something strong," William grunted, sinking into the plush leather booth at the Velvet Room, a highly exclusive underground lounge owned by his syndicate. "I feel like I'm losing my mind. I saw a man with dark hair in the lobby and my heart skipped a beat. I'm being Pavlovian conditioned by a gremlin." Julian handed him a glass of neat whiskey. "Perhaps, boss, it is time to admit that the gremlin has grown on you." "He has not grown on me. He is a fungus," William snapped, downing half the glass. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors of the lounge opened. The low hum of conversation in the club instantly died down. Every head turned. It was Leo. William gripped his whiskey glass so tightly his knuckles turned entirely white. Leo looked devastating. He was wearing a sheer, dark crimson silk shirt completely unbuttoned halfway down his chest, tucked tightly into black leather pants that hugged his thighs like a second skin. He wore delicate, dripping silver chains around his neck, drawing the eye directly to his collarbones. He looked like pure, concentrated sin. And, true to his new strategy, Leo didn't even glance in William's direction. Leo swaggered gracefully over to the illuminated bar, completely ignoring the terrifying Mafia boss in the VIP booth. He ordered a martini, leaning casually against the mahogany counter, looking utterly bored and utterly irresistible. William couldn't look away. He was paralyzed. "Don't look at him," his brain screamed. "He has Lucas's nose. He has Lucas's chin." But William's inner alpha roared back, "Who cares? Look at that waist." Within 60 seconds, the inevitable happened. A massive, heavily tattooed alpha, a lieutenant from a minor, allied gang, spotted the lone Omega. The man approached Leo, a sleazy, confident smirk on his face. William went entirely rigid. From across the room, William watched as the alpha leaned in far too close to Leo. He watched Leo turn, blink his big, doe-like eyes, and let out a soft, breathy laugh. Leo playfully swatted the alpha's chest, tossing his dark hair back, exposing the delicate, unbidden scent gland on his neck to the stranger. The alpha's eyes darkened with lust. He leaned in closer, his hand reaching out to touch Leo's hip. A loud, sharp crack echoed through the VIP booth. Julian jumped slightly. He looked down. William had gripped his crystal whiskey glass so hard that it had completely shattered in his hand. Amber liquid and shards of glass dripped from his clenched fist onto the table, but William didn't even seem to notice the blood or the pain. His eyes were pitch black. The air in the lounge instantly grew terrifyingly cold. The suffocating, violent aura of an enraged, highly territorial alpha exploded from William's booth, sweeping across the room like a shockwave. The music seemed to falter. The sleazy alpha at the bar froze mid-reach. The sheer, crushing pressure of William's aura slammed into his spine. The man slowly, terrified, turned his head toward the VIP section. William was standing up. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't drawing a weapon. He was just staring directly at the alpha with eyes that promised a slow, agonizing death. "Touch him, and I will sever your hands from your wrists and feed them to my dogs," William's eyes screamed. The alpha swallowed hard, all color draining from his face. He instantly raised both hands in a gesture of absolute surrender, backed away from Leo so fast he tripped over a barstool, and practically sprinted out of the club. The heavy, terrifying aura in the room slowly dissipated. William stood there, his chest heaving, his bloody hand dripping onto the floor. He realized what he had just done. He had just publicly claimed territory over his mortal enemy's twin brother. He looked toward the bar. Leo was still leaning against the counter. He wasn't terrified of the aura. In fact, he looked absolutely delighted. Leo picked up his martini glass, took a slow sip, and locked eyes with William. Leo ran a tongue over his plush bottom lip, offered a devastatingly filthy smirk, and distinctly mouthed the words, "Jealous, Daddy." William couldn't take it anymore. Without a word to Julian, William turned on his heel and stormed out the back exit of the club, his heart pounding a frantic, terrifying rhythm against his ribs. He was falling, and he couldn't stop it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, a completely different kind of paranoia was brewing inside the Lucas estate. Lucas sat in his dimly lit study, reviewing shipping manifests, but his mind was completely elsewhere. He set his pen down and rubbed his face. Something was deeply, terribly wrong with his little angel. For the past week, Leo had been acting completely out of character. The innocent, fragile Omega who usually spent his evenings baking or reading, or so Lucas believed, was suddenly spending hours in front of the mirror. Lucas had intercepted a package yesterday from a designer boutique containing outfits that Lucas deemed legally classified as lingerie. Furthermore, Leo was glowing. His scent was richer, sweeter, and lacked any of the usual anxiety. He was humming cheerful pop songs while making breakfast. He was smiling at his phone constantly. To anyone else, it would look like an Omega in the early stages of a very happy courtship. To Lucas, it looked like a 5-alarm emergency. "Maria," Lucas called out, his voice stern. The head maid scurried into the study, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yes, boss. Has Leo mentioned any boys to you recently?" Lucas asked, narrowing his eyes. "Any new friends from college? Anyone he's been texting?" "Oh, no, boss," Maria smiled nervously. "Young Master Leo just says he's been going to the library to study. Although, he did ask me how to get blood stains out of a white cashmere sweater the other day." Lucas's blood ran cold. Blood stains. His mind instantly flashed back to the night Leo came home crying, his palms bleeding, wearing an oversized shirt, claiming a boy had shoved him in a parking lot. He's back with him, Lucas realized with absolute, horrifying certainty. That abusive, worthless piece of trash who made my brother cry has manipulated his way back into Leo's life. He's grooming him. He's making my angel think this toxic behavior is love. Lucas stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "Cancel my meetings for the next 3 days, Lucas growled, his alpha aura flaring with fierce, protective wrath. "Tell the men to prep the blacked-out SUV. I need heavy tactical gear, a sniper rifle, and a pair of long-range binoculars." Maria gasped, clutching her apron. "Boss, are we going to war with William's syndicate?" "No," Lucas said, his eyes darkening as he strapped his shoulder holster on. "I am going on a hunting trip. Nobody breaks my little brother's heart, makes him bleed, and gets away with it. I am going to follow Leo today. And when I find this college boy he's secretly meeting." Lucas racked the slide of his handgun, a terrifying, protective older brother on a warpath. "I'm going to introduce him to my favorite shovel." The next morning, Leo was on a mission. He had successfully planted the seed of desire in William's stubborn, Mafia-hardened brain, and today, he was going to water it until it bloomed into a full-blown crisis. Leo stood in front of his massive mirror, entirely pleased with his reflection. He was wearing a pair of black leather pants so tight they defied the laws of physics, paired with a completely sheer, glittering silver mesh shirt. It left absolutely nothing to the imagination. He sprayed a heavy cloud of his sweet vanilla and strawberry perfume, grabbed his car keys, and strutted out of his bedroom, ready to ruin an alpha's day. He sashayed down the grand marble staircase, humming a cheerful pop tune. He was 3 steps away from the front door when a massive, terrifying silhouette stepped out of the study, blocking his path. "And just where do you think you are going?" Leo froze. Lucas stood there, a cup of black coffee in his hand, his eyes slowly dragging up and down Leo's outfit. The alpha's face was completely unreadable, which was the most terrifying expression Lucas had. Leo's brilliant, manipulative brain kicked into extreme overdrive. He hid his panic behind a perfectly executed, innocent blink. "To college, Luke," Leo said sweetly, playing with his car keys. "I have a full day of classes." "In that?" Lucas asked, his voice dropping a dangerously protective octave. He pointed a scarred finger at the mesh shirt. "Leo, I can see your belly button. I can see your ribs. You look like you're about to go pole dance at a subterranean nightclub, not attend macroeconomics." "It's for drama club," Leo blurted out, his eyes widening with fake enthusiasm. "Yes, drama club. We're doing a modern, avant-garde retelling of Hamlet. I'm playing the ghost of Hamlet's father, but like, if the ghost was a misunderstood club promoter." Lucas stared at him. He didn't blink. He just took a slow sip of his coffee. "Drama club," Lucas repeated flatly. "Yes. It's highly artistic, Luke, you wouldn't understand the creative vision." "Go upstairs and change," Lucas ordered, his tone brooking absolutely no argument. "Or I am buying the college, firing the drama teacher, and having the theater department demolished by bulldozers." Leo pouted, his lower lip trembling slightly, but he knew when to retreat. You're stifling my art, Lucas. I am stifling your exposure to pneumonia and sleazy frat boys, Lucas countered, turning back to his study. You have 5 minutes. If you aren't wearing a sweater that covers your collarbones, I'm taking your car keys. 10 minutes later, a deeply disgruntled Leo stomped out the front door. The leather and mesh were gone. He was now wearing an oversized, fluffy baby blue sweater that swallowed his hands, loose-fitting denim jeans, and white sneakers. He looked exactly like the fragile, innocent angel his brother thought he was. I look like a marshmallow, Leo muttered angrily, sliding into his red sports car. William is going to think I'm dressed for a toddler's birthday party. Whatever. I'll just sit on his lap again. That usually distracts him from the wardrobe. Leo peeled out of the driveway, his spirits lifting as he merged onto the highway. He was planning to, accidentally, run into William at his favorite tailor today. He drove for 10 minutes, singing loudly to the radio. He stopped at a red light and casually flipped the rearview mirror down to check his lip gloss. He froze. 3 cars behind him, blending seamlessly into the morning traffic, was a massive, blacked-out tactical SUV. It had reinforced bumpers, bulletproof glass, and an incredibly distinct, illegal antenna on the roof. Leo's blood ran cold. Lucas. His brother hadn't believed the drama club excuse. Lucas was following him. If Leo drove to William's territory, it wouldn't just be an awkward encounter, it would trigger a full-scale mafia war in the middle of the street. Lucas would shoot William, William would shoot Lucas, and Leo would be stuck choosing which funeral to attend. Abort mission, Leo's brain screamed. Code red. Abort. The light turned green. Leo hit the gas, instantly changing lanes and taking the exit that actually led to the local university. With one hand on the wheel, he frantically grabbed his phone and voice-to-texted his best friends. Toby. Max. Emergency. The dragon has left the cave and is on my tail. I repeat, Lucas is following me. Meet me at the library in 10 minutes. Bring big books and look smart or we all die. 20 minutes later, the university library was the site of an absolute miracle. Leo, Toby, and Max were sitting at a large oak table in the center of the quiet study hall. Between them lay a mountain of textbooks on cellular biology, advanced calculus, and classical literature. Toby was sweating profusely, holding a textbook upside down. Leo, what is a mitochondria? He hissed nervously. I don't know, just point at the graphs and nod thoughtfully. Leo whispered back, adjusting a pair of fake reading glasses he kept in his bag for emergencies. Smile. He's watching. Outside, crouched in a meticulously trimmed oak tree near the library windows, the most feared cartel boss in the city was peering through high-tech, military-grade binoculars. Lucas adjusted the focus, zeroing in on the table. Inside the library, the rest of the student body and the librarian were staring at Leo's table in absolute, terrified shock. This was Leo, the Omega who had successfully blackmailed the dean last semester to get premium parking. The gremlin who brought terror to the cafeteria. Why was he reading? No one dared to speak. They all just watched the terrifying anomaly. Through the binoculars, Lucas watched Leo point to a complex pie chart, say something to his friends, and offer a soft, angelic smile. Max enthusiastically took notes. Lucas let out a long, heavy sigh of relief. He lowered the binoculars, resting his head against the bark of the tree. The heavy knot of paranoia in his chest finally dissolved. He really is just studying, Lucas whispered to himself, a proud, watery smile breaking across his hardened face. My sweet, innocent boy. He really was in the drama club. I'm a monster for doubting him. Lucas dropped quietly out of the tree, landing silently on the grass. He tapped his earpiece. All units, stand down. The package is secure and engaged in academic pursuits. Let's go home. Meanwhile, across the city, the silence in William's private office was absolutely deafening. William was sitting at his massive desk, staring blankly at a spreadsheet of illegal casino profits. But he wasn't reading the numbers. He was listening. He had gone to the gym at 6 a.m. No Leo. He had visited his tailor at 10 a.m. No Leo. He had even purposefully walked past a boutique selling violently expensive leather pants. Absolutely no Leo. Julian, William said, his voice tense, not looking up from his desk. Did security report any breaches today? No, boss, Julian replied, standing by the door. Perimeter is secure. No unauthorized entries. No sightings of red sports cars. William frowned deeply. He tapped his gold pen against the mahogany desk. It had been 8 days of constant psychological warfare. Leo was always somewhere. Why wasn't he here today? Did he finally give up? Did Lucas find out? Was he hurt? William abruptly stood up, his chair rolling back. He's giving up too easily, William muttered, pacing the room. It's a trick. He's lulling me into a false sense of security. He's probably waiting in the ceiling tiles right now. Boss, Julian said softly, offering a knowing, pitying look. I believe the boy simply took the day off. You should be relieved. I am relieved. William barked defensively, crossing his arms. I am thrilled. I have never been happier. The air smells like gunpowder again, just the way I like it. I don't miss the vanilla at all. Julian didn't say a word. He just slowly blinked. William spent the rest of the day in a miserable, distracted state. He felt an odd, hollow emptiness in his chest. Every time his office door opened, his heart skipped a beat, fully expecting a gremlin in a sheer shirt to leap onto his lap. But it was only ever his terrifyingly ugly, heavily bearded lieutenants. By the time night fell, William was exhausted. He retreated to his heavily fortified master suite, locked the doors, and collapsed into bed, desperately needing sleep to reset his malfunctioning brain. He fell into a deep, heavy slumber. The dream started beautifully. William was standing in a soft, dimly lit room. The air was thick with the intoxicating, sweet scent of vanilla and wild strawberries. A figure walked toward him out of the shadows. It was Leo. He was wearing the black silk dress shirt, his eyes dark and heavy with desire. Leo stepped between William's legs, wrapping his delicate arms around William's neck. I told you I'd make you see me, Leo whispered, his breath ghosting over William's lips. William couldn't resist anymore. His alpha instincts took completely over. He reached out, grabbing Leo by the waist, pulling the omega flush against his chest. He leaned down and captured Leo's lips in a bruising, passionate, desperately hungry kiss. It was perfect. It was everything he had been craving. But suddenly, the soft body in his arms went completely rigid. The sweet scent of vanilla violently vanished, replaced by the choking, bitter stench of cigar smoke, winter frost, and blood. William opened his eyes. He wasn't holding a delicate omega. He was gripping the broad, muscular shoulders of an alpha in full tactical gear. The lips he was kissing tasted like cheap whiskey. William pulled back in sheer, unadulterated horror. Standing in his arms, smirking a demonic, twisted smirk, was Lucas. Surprise, William, Lucas growled in his deep, gravelly voice. Lucas casually reached down to his thigh holster, drew a massive Desert Eagle handgun, and pressed the cold steel barrel directly between William's eyes. Did you really think you could kiss my brother? Bang! William shot up in bed with a violent gasp. He was drenched in a cold sweat, his chest heaving as if he had just run a marathon. He frantically patted his own body, making sure there wasn't a bullet hole in his forehead. He looked wildly around the dark, empty master suite, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He collapsed back onto the pillows, staring up at the ceiling in absolute, terrified despair. I am cursed, William whispered into the darkness, dragging a shaking hand over his face. I am trapped in a Greek tragedy. I am stuck with twin brothers. One wants to blow my brains out with a gun, and the other wants to completely destroy my sanity with his body. William rolled over, pulling the heavy duvet over his head. Julian, William mumbled miserably into his pillow, even though no one was there. Cancel all my meetings tomorrow. I need to find a therapist who specializes in identical twin mafia trauma. The morning after his library charade, Leo decided to play it safe. He stayed inside the sprawling Lucas estate, acting like a ghost in fuzzy slippers, carefully monitoring his brother's mood. He found Lucas in the solarium, peacefully humming a classical tune while pruning a rare, poisonous orchid. The dark, suffocating alpha aura that had terrified the entire compound yesterday was completely gone. Lucas looked relaxed, content, and thoroughly convinced that his baby brother was a pure, studious angel whose only vice was highlighting his textbooks too aggressively. Leo let out a massive, silent sigh of relief from behind a marble pillar. Coast is clear. He immediately sprinted back upstairs to his extravagant bedroom, locking the door behind him. His phone buzzed on his vanity. It was a text from Max. Target acquired. William just walked into the velvet room. He looks like he hasn't slept in a week and is aggressively glaring at the cocktail menu. Go get your man. Leo grinned, a wicked, triumphant sparkle in his eyes. He had starved William of his presence for 2 whole days. The alpha was probably losing his mind. It was time to strike. Leo completely bypassed the studious angel section of his closet and went straight for the heavy artillery. He pulled out a black lace corset that cinched his waist so tightly it was borderline illegal, pairing it with dark crimson silk trousers that flared elegantly at the ankles. He added a dramatic velvet choker, a spritz of his signature vanilla and wild strawberry perfume, and fluffed his dark hair until it looked perfectly, effortlessly messy. He looked devastating. He looked like the downfall of empires. All right, Willie, Leo purred to his reflection, grabbing his car keys. Let's see if you can handle this without pulling a gun on me. He opened his bedroom door and tiptoed down the grand staircase, fully intending to slip out the side door before Lucas even knew he was gone. However, as he reached the landing, he froze. Voices were drifting from the open doors of the formal parlor. It was Lucas, and he wasn't alone. He was talking to Maria, the head maid, who had essentially helped raise the twins since they were children. Maria was the only person in the entire syndicate who could scold Lucas without ending up in a concrete mixer. I am just saying, boss, Maria's stern, matronly voice echoed clearly into the hall. You cannot be so relaxed. Young Master Leo is no longer a child. He is a fully grown, extraordinarily beautiful Omega. And he is naive to the ways of the world. Leo's jaw dropped. Naive. I literally sexually harassed your biggest rival on his own desk last week. Maria, I checked on him, Lucas replied, his tone defensive but respectful. He was at the library. He's studying. He's focused on his education. Books cannot protect him from biology, boss, Maria pressed on, her tone grave. Alphas are wolves. They are cunning, they are manipulative, and they can smell an unbonded, high-status Omega from a mile away. You cannot simply trust that he will make the right choices. What if some sleazy, fast-talking college boy manipulates our young master? He is too soft-hearted. He would be eaten alive. Behind the wall, Leo squeezed his eyes shut. Maria, you traitor. I am the wolf. I am the one doing the manipulating. A heavy, terrifying silence fell over the parlor. Leo could practically hear the gears turning in his brother's paranoid, overprotective alpha brain. You're right, Lucas said, his voice dropping to that dark, dangerous rumble. I have been blind. I was so focused on keeping him away from the underworld that I forgot how predatory normal alphas can be. What do you suggest, Maria? Should I double his security detail? Have his phone tapped? Ban him from campus? Heavens, no, that will only make him resent you, Maria sighed. You must guide him. If you want him to avoid the bad apples, you must handpick a good one. Arrange a meeting. A safe, controlled environment with an alpha you trust. A blind date, Lucas murmured, the idea clearly taking root. Exactly, Maria encouraged. Consider Don Rossi's youngest son, Matteo. He just returned from studying finance in Milan. He is polite, he is from a respected family, and most importantly, he knows better than to disrespect you. Set them up for a quiet dinner. Let young Master Leo experience a true gentleman. Matteo Rossi. Lucas mused. Yes, that is brilliant, Maria. Matteo is terrified of me. He wouldn't dare breathe on Leo without my permission. It's the perfect, safe match. Out in the hallway, Leo was internally screaming. A safe match. Matteo Rossi. Leo remembered Matteo from a gala 3 years ago. The boy collected vintage stamps and was allergic to dairy. He was the exact opposite of William. Leo didn't want a safe gentleman. He wanted the terrifying, emotionally repressed Mafia kingpin with the lethal thighs. I will call Don Rossi tonight to arrange the dinner for this weekend, Lucas declared firmly. Thank you, Maria. You have saved my brother's future. Leo frantically backed away up the stairs. He was completely trapped. If he walked past the parlor right now wearing a lace corset and smelling like pure temptation, Lucas would have an absolute aneurysm. His brother would realize Maria's warnings were 10 times worse than she imagined. Lock Leo in a vault, and marry him off to Matteo Rossi by tomorrow morning. Defeated, Leo rushed back to his bedroom, threw his keys at the wall, and dramatically face-planted onto his mattress. I am going to strangle Matteo Rossi, Leo muffled into his duvet, kicking his legs in frustration. And then I'm going to strangle Maria. William is waiting for me. Meanwhile, across the city, the atmosphere inside the VIP section of the Velvet Room was reaching a critical level of toxicity. William was sitting in the exact center of his curved leather booth. He had a glass of incredibly expensive scotch in his hand. The ice had melted 45 minutes ago, turning the drink into lukewarm, watery sludge, but William hadn't taken a single sip. His eyes were absolutely glued to the club's entrance. "Boss," Julian said softly, standing at a respectful distance. He checked his glowing wristwatch. "It is 1 a.m. If you are waiting for a specific shipment report, I can have it sent to the mansion." "I am not waiting for anything, Julian," William snapped defensively, not breaking his gaze from the door. "I am simply observing the clientele. Making sure there are no rival factions encroaching on our territory." "Right," Julian deadpanned. "And you have been observing the clientele for 3.5 hours. In a freshly pressed suit. Wearing the cologne you only reserve for high-profile summits." William's jaw clenched so hard his teeth audibly ground together. "It is a standard clubbing attire, Julian." "Boss, you threatened to shoot a busboy 20 minutes ago because he walked in carrying a tray of strawberry martinis and you thought it was someone else." "He startled me," William hissed, finally breaking his gaze away from the door to glare at his right-hand man. Julian let out a long, suffering sigh. "William, sir, he is not coming." The words hit William directly in the chest, echoing the hollow, miserable feeling that had been eating at him for 48 hours. It was true. Leo hadn't shown up at the gym. He hadn't shown up at the tailor. And now, he wasn't here. The Omega who had sworn to make William fall for him, the brat who had aggressively pursued him, had completely vanished. William's inner alpha was practically clawing at the walls of his sanity. Where is he? Did I push him too far? Did Lucas find out? Is he hurt? Did another alpha approach him at a library and steal his attention? The thought of Leo batting his eyelashes at some college frat boy made William's blood literally boil. The glass in his hand ominously cracked. "I don't care that he's not coming," William lied through his teeth, aggressively shoving the cracked glass onto the table. "In fact, I am celebrating. The gremlin has finally realized that he cannot break me. My tactical ignorance worked. I am victorious." "You look absolutely miserable, boss," Julian pointed out, possessing a death wish. "You look like a man who has realized he actually likes the gremlin." "One more word, Julian, and I will demote you to guarding the waste management facilities in New Jersey," William threatened, standing up abruptly. He buttoned his suit jacket, his face a mask of absolute, terrifying stoicism, masking the absolute chaos inside his heart. "We are leaving." As William stormed out of the club, his intimidating aura parting the sea of partygoers like Moses at the Red Sea, he had no idea what was happening across town. He had no idea that the Omega he was desperately, secretly craving was currently locked in a bedroom, aggressively plotting how to sabotage a blind date. William climbed into the back of his armored SUV, staring out the tinted window at the neon city lights. "He's gone," William thought bitterly, crossing his arms over his chest. "It's over. I should be happy." He squeezed his eyes shut. "Then why do I feel like I just lost a war?" The evening of the dreaded blind date arrived, and Leo was experiencing a level of personal tragedy he had never known before. He was staring at his reflection in the mirror, looking absolutely disgusted. Under Maria's strict, watchful eye, Leo had been forced into an outfit that practically screamed purity. He was wearing a high-collared, cable-knit beige sweater, beige slacks, and brown loafers. He looked like a substitute librarian. He looked like he enjoyed unseasoned chicken. "I look like a piece of oatmeal, Maria," Leo complained, crossing his arms and pouting at the elderly maid. "If I wear this, no alpha will ever want me. I won't even want myself." "You look respectable, young master," Maria said firmly, adjusting his collar so it covered even a millimeter of his neck. "You look like a proper Omega ready to meet a proper gentleman. Now, smile. Matteo Rossi is waiting downstairs with your brother." Leo groaned dramatically and dragged his feet out of the room. Downstairs in the grand foyer, the atmosphere was thick enough to slice with a machete. Matteo Rossi was a perfectly nice, perfectly average 22-year-old alpha. He liked vintage stamps, he had a degree in finance, and he was currently sweating so profusely he looked like he had just run a marathon in a sauna. Standing opposite him was Lucas. The Mafia boss wasn't saying a word. He was simply leaning against the marble staircase, methodically disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling a high-powered sniper rifle. "So," Lucas said, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that echoed in the cavernous hall. He snapped a magazine into the rifle with a sharp clack. "You will take him to l'Etoile d'Or. You have the private booth. You will order him the sea bass. He likes the sea bass." "Why yes, sir, Don Lucas. Sea bass. Absolutely," Matteo squeaked, his voice cracking. "You will not order alcohol. You will not drive over 40 miles per hour. Your hands will remain firmly on your own utensils at all times," Lucas continued, staring blankly at the terrified alpha. "If you make him cry, if you make him uncomfortable, or if he returns to this house 1 single minute past 10 p.m. Lucas slowly raised the sniper rifle, looking through the scope directly at Matteo's forehead. "I will ensure your family lineage ends with you. Do we have an understanding? Crystal clear. 10 p.m. No hands. Sea bass." Matteo practically sobbed, nodding so fast his glasses nearly flew off his face. "Luke, don't scare my date." Leo's sweet, angelic voice chimed from the stairs. Lucas instantly lowered the weapon, his terrifying aura vanishing as he looked up at his brother. "I wasn't scaring him, Angel. We were just discussing dinner etiquette." Leo skipped down the remaining steps, offering Matteo a flawless, innocent smile that completely hid the fact that he was internally planning to sabotage this date within the first 10 minutes. "Hi, Matteo. It's so nice to meet you." "A pleasure, Leo." Matteo bowed stiffly, terrified to even look directly at the Omega. "Shall we have fun, sweetie? Call me if the soup is too hot," Lucas called out, waving fondly as they walked out the door. 45 minutes later, across town at the ridiculously exclusive, Michelin-starred French restaurant l'Etoile d'Or, a completely different Mafia boss was having an existential crisis over a filet mignon. William was sitting in a dimly lit corner booth, aggressively stabbing his medium-rare steak with a silver fork. "Boss," Julian sighed, swirling a glass of red wine. "You are massacring a $400 piece of meat. The chef is weeping in the kitchen." "I am perfectly fine, Julian," William ground out, his jaw clenched tight. "I am enjoying my meal. I am enjoying the peace and quiet. I am entirely unbothered by the fact that I haven't been sexually harassed in 3 days. You have checked your phone 17 times in the last hour to see if an unknown number texted you. I am waiting for a shipment update from the docks. The docks are closed on Sundays, William." William violently dropped his fork. He rubbed his temples, a headache building behind his eyes. He couldn't deny it anymore. The silence was deafening. The absence of the vanilla and strawberry scent was making his inner alpha pace like a caged animal. He had driven the Omega away. He had told him he felt sick looking at his face. "I pushed him too far," William thought miserably. He finally gave up. Suddenly, the heavy mahogany doors of the restaurant opened. The maitre d' scurried forward. William wasn't paying attention until a very specific, intoxicatingly sweet scent drifted through the climate-controlled air of the restaurant. Vanilla. Wild strawberries. William's head snapped up so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. There he was, walking into the restaurant, looking ridiculously soft in a beige cable knit sweater, was Leo. William's heart did a violent, terrifying leap against his ribcage. "He's here. He found me." William instinctively straightened his tie, his inner alpha preening at the sight of the Omega. But then, William noticed the man walking nervously beside him. It was an alpha. A young, decent-looking alpha who was gently placing a hand on the small of Leo's back to guide him toward a private booth. William's brain completely stopped functioning. The world around him faded to static. Red alert. Defcon 1. "Julian," William whispered, his voice vibrating with a sudden, lethal intensity. The air around their table dropped 10 degrees. "Who is that with him?" Julian followed William's murderous gaze. "That appears to be Matteo Rossi, boss. Don Rossi's youngest son. He's a harmless accountant. He is a dead man," William growled, his hands gripping the edge of the table so hard the heavy oak groaned. "He is touching him. Julian, his hand is on his back. I am going to rip his arm off and beat him with it. Boss, please, we are in public. Across the restaurant, Leo slid into the plush booth opposite Matteo. He casually scanned the room, pretending to look at the chandeliers, when his eyes locked directly onto William sitting in the corner. Leo froze for a split second. And then, the brilliant, evil gremlin inside him woke up from its beige slumber. Oh, jackpot, Leo thought, an invisible, wicked smirk spreading across his face. You want to play hard to get, Willie? Let's see how much of this you can take. Leo immediately turned his full, undivided attention to Matteo. He leaned forward across the table, propping his chin on his hands, and offered Matteo the most dazzling, sweetest smile he could muster. So, Matteo, Leo practically cooed, his voice carrying just enough to drift across the quiet restaurant. Tell me everything about your vintage stamp collection. I find a man with hobbies so manly. Matteo, who had never had anyone take an interest in his stamps in his entire life, instantly perked up. Really? Well, it started when I found a rare 1918 inverted Jenny. Wow, Leo gasped softly, reaching across the table to gently place his hand over Matteo's. He batted his eyelashes. That is fascinating. You must be so smart. Crack. Back in the corner booth, William had just snapped a solid silver butter knife clean in half. Julian slowly pulled his own plate out of the splash zone. William's eyes were practically glowing red. The sheer, unadulterated hypocrisy of his situation was entirely lost on him. 2 days ago, he claimed he hated Leo's face. Because it looked like Lucas. Right now, he didn't see Lucas at all. He just saw his Omega touching another Alpha. He is laughing, William hissed, his chest heaving as he watched Leo throw his head back in a fake, melodic giggle at something Matteo said. Julian, he is laughing at a story about postage stamps. Stamps. He told me he wanted to be tied to my headboard, and now he is swooning over adhesive paper. Boss, you told him you never wanted to see him again. He has evidently moved on, Julian said calmly, actively throwing gasoline on the fire. I lied. William practically roared in a hushed whisper, his alpha instincts completely overriding his logic. I am going over there. William, do not cause a scene. William was already up. He threw his napkin onto the table, his towering, muscular frame cutting through the restaurant like a shark through water. The absolute fury rolling off him was so intense that waiters literally pressed themselves against the walls to get out of his way. At the private booth, Matteo was mid-sentence. And the perforation on the edges is what makes it so valuable. A shadow fell over the table. The temperature plummeted to freezing. Matteo looked up. The color completely drained from his face. Standing over him was William, the most ruthless, terrifying syndicate boss on the East Coast. Good evening, William said. His voice was terrifyingly calm, but his eyes were locked onto Matteo with lethal intent. You are in my seat. Matteo started shaking so violently his water glass rattled. Don William. I apologize, I didn't know this was your table, the maitre d' seated us. Leo, meanwhile, didn't look at William. He took a slow, delicate sip of his water, fighting the massive, triumphant smirk trying to break across his face. Took you long enough, Daddy. William, Leo said, his voice entirely dismissive and sweet. He finally looked up, his big eyes wide and innocent. You're interrupting. Matteo and I are on a date. Please don't be rude to my alpha. My alpha. The word snapped the last remaining thread of William's sanity. William didn't yell. He didn't pull a gun. He simply slammed both of his massive hands down on the table, leaning directly into Matteo's personal space. The suffocating weight of his alpha aura slammed into the younger man. Matteo, William whispered, his voice dripping with venom. If you do not stand up, walk out that door, and forget you ever met this Omega, I will personally ensure your entire vintage stamp collection is incinerated, and you are buried with the ashes. You have 3 seconds. 1. Matteo yelled, instantly jumping out of the booth. He didn't even grab his jacket. He was caught between Lucas's sniper rifle and William's absolute wrath. I'm leaving. I hate stamps. Nice to meet you, Leo, have a great life. Matteo practically sprinted out of the restaurant, leaving a trail of pure terror in his wake. The silence at the table was heavy. William stood there, his chest rising and falling heavily, his eyes blazing as he looked down at the Omega in the beige sweater. Leo slowly looked up at him. The innocent facade dropped instantly. The wicked, feral gremlin was back. Leo propped his chin on his hands, looking completely unbothered that his date had just fled for his life. Well, Leo purred, a devastating, sultry smirk spreading across his lips. That was incredibly rude. Who's going to buy my sea bass now? William didn't say a word. He walked around the table, grabbed Leo by the collar of his horribly modest beige sweater, and hauled him out of the booth. Hey! Leo yelped, though he didn't fight back at all as William dragged him toward the back hallway of the restaurant, completely ignoring the shocked stares of the patrons. William kicked open the door to a private, soundproof coachroom and shoved Leo inside. The door slammed shut behind them, pitching them into dim, private lighting. Before Leo could even utter a sassy remark, William pinned him flat against the wall. The alpha's hands were planted firmly on either side of Leo's head, trapping him completely. William was breathing hard, his face inches from Leo's, his dark eyes entirely feral. "Are you out of your mind?" William hissed, his voice rough and ragged. "What are you doing with him?" "I'm moving on," Leo whispered, looking up through his eyelashes, entirely unaffected by the anger, thoroughly enjoying the sheer jealousy radiating from the alpha. "You told me you didn't want me. My brother set me up on a blind date. I was just being a good boy." "You are not a good boy," William practically growled, his gaze dropping to Leo's lips. "You are a menace. You are a nightmare. You have ruined my life." "Then let me go," Leo challenged softly, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm. He tilted his chin up, closing the distance just a fraction of an inch. "Let me go back to Mateo." William let out a frustrated, defeated groan. The wall he had built completely crumbled. He grabbed Leo's hips, pulling the omega flush against his body. "If I ever see you looking at another alpha like that again," William whispered, his voice thick with raw, desperate possession, "I will burn this entire city to the ground." And then, finally, William closed the distance and crashed his lips onto Leo's. The kiss in the dim, cramped coachroom was nothing short of apocalyptic. The moment William's lips crashed into Leo's, months of built-up aggression, mafia rivalry, and desperate, agonizing denial completely evaporated. William kissed him like a man who had been starving in the desert and had finally found water. It was bruising, hungry, and violently possessive. Leo let out a muffled, triumphant sound against William's mouth. He didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms tightly around the alpha's broad neck, tangling his fingers in William's perfectly styled dark hair, pulling him closer until there wasn't a millimeter of space between them. William groaned, a deep, primal sound that vibrated in his chest. His large hands slid down from Leo's waist, gripping the Omega's thighs, lifting him effortlessly off the floor. Leo immediately wrapped his legs around William's waist, pinning him against the wall of the coachroom. "You absolute brat," William breathed raggedly against Leo's lips, trailing hot, open-mouthed kisses down the Omega's jawline, entirely disregarding the high collar of the awful beige sweater. "You manipulative, maddening menace. I couldn't breathe for 2 days. I told you," Leo panted, his head falling back as William's teeth grazed his pulse point. The intoxicating scent of vanilla and winter frost mixed perfectly in the small space. "I told you I'd make you look at me. Say it, William. Tell me you don't see my brother." William pulled back just enough to look into Leo's heavily dilated, dark eyes. The alpha's gaze was feral, completely stripped of its usual icy control. "I don't see him," William swore, his voice a rough, desperate whisper. "I only see you. Only you." William kissed him again, harder this time. But the coachroom was too small, too public. William needed him entirely to himself. He abruptly pulled away, setting a heavily panting Leo back on his feet. "We are leaving," William commanded, grabbing Leo's hand and interlacing their fingers. "I own the luxury hotel across the street. My penthouse is on the top floor. If we stay here another minute, I'm going to ruin you on a pile of winter coats." Leo offered a devastating, wicked smirk, his lips swollen and red. "Lead the way, Daddy." Meanwhile, 5 miles away, a beige sedan was speeding erratically down the highway. Inside, Matteo Rossi was having a full-blown panic attack. He was gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. He had escaped. He was alive. His stamp collection was safe. But as the adrenaline slowly faded, a horrifying, sickening realization washed over him. "I left him." Matteo slammed on the brakes, pulling the car onto the shoulder of the highway. He stared out the windshield, hyperventilating. He had just abandoned an Omega. Not just any Omega, but Don Lucas's precious, innocent, fragile younger brother. He had left him entirely alone with Don William, the most ruthless, bloodthirsty alpha in the city. William and Lucas were mortal enemies. They had a blood feud. Oh my God, Mateo gasped, clutching his chest. William didn't want the table. He wanted Leo. He's going to use Leo to get back at Lucas. He's going to torture him, or worse. Mateo imagined Leo's sweet, innocent face, his cable-knit sweater, his polite smile. Leo wouldn't know how to defend himself. He was probably crying right now, begging for his life in the back of William's SUV. Mateo's phone sat in the passenger seat. He had to call Lucas. But if he called Lucas, he would have to confess that he ran away like a coward and left the boy behind. Lucas had pointed a sniper rifle at his forehead just an hour ago. Lucas would absolutely slaughter him. But if Leo dies, Lucas will slaughter my entire bloodline, Mateo reasoned frantically. With trembling fingers, Mateo picked up his phone and dialed the number he prayed he would never have to use. The phone rang twice. Rossi, Lucas's deep, terrifying voice echoed through the speaker. It is barely 8:30. Why are you calling? Is something wrong with his sea bass? Don Lucas, Mateo sobbed, completely breaking down. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to stay, but he threatened me. Silence fell over the line. When Lucas finally spoke, the temperature of the universe seemed to drop to absolute zero. Who threatened you? Where is my brother? It was William. Mateo cried. He was at the restaurant. He cornered us at the booth. He told me he'd kill me and burn my house down if I didn't leave. He took Leo, Don Lucas. William kidnapped him. Crack. The sound of Lucas shattering his own cell phone screen echoed through the receiver. Where? Lucas whispered. The voice didn't sound human. It sounded like a demon ascending from hell. L'Etoile d'Or. They went toward the back. Lucas hung up. Inside the Lucas estate, the alarms instantly began blaring. The treaty was broken. The one unwritten rule of the underworld, family is off limits, had been violently shattered by William. Arm up. Lucas roared, kicking the doors of his armory open. His alpha aura was so violently out of control that his men were physically struggling to breathe in his presence. William took Leo. We are going to war. The penthouse suite of the Grand Continental was a sprawling masterpiece of modern architecture, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city skyline. But William and Leo hadn't even made it past the entryway before the clothes started disappearing. The awful beige sweater was the first casualty, violently pulled over Leo's head and tossed onto a $1 million modern art sculpture. William's expensive suit jacket followed, landing in a crumpled heap on the marble floor. God, you are beautiful, William groaned, backing Leo against the plush, king-sized bed in the center of the master bedroom. Leo was wearing nothing but the trousers of his awful date outfit, his pale skin glowing in the dim, golden light of the city below. He reached out, his small, delicate hands unbuttoning William's crisp dress shirt with frantic speed, pushing the fabric off the alpha's broad, heavily scarred shoulders. You kept me waiting, Leo whispered, looking up at William with eyes entirely dark with lust and victory. He traced a finger over a jagged scar on William's chest. You made me wear beige, Willie. You have to make it up to me. I am going to make you forget your own name, William swore fiercely. He pushed Leo back onto the mattress. It was a collision of fire and gasoline. The banter and the games were entirely gone, replaced by a raw, desperate passion. William hovered over him, kissing him deeply, his hands mapping every curve of the Omega's body, worshipping the skin he had tried so hard to push away. Leo arched into the touch, a soft, breathless moan escaping his lips, completely surrendering to the alpha he had been chasing for months. They were entirely lost in their own world. They didn't hear the screeching of tires on the street below. They didn't hear the chaotic shouting in the hotel lobby. Out in the carpeted hallway of the penthouse floor, Julian was standing guard. He was calmly checking his emails on his phone when the elevator doors at the end of the hall violently pinged open. Julian looked up and instantly closed his phone. Marching down the hallway was the apocalypse itself. Lucas, dressed in full black tactical gear, holding a heavily modified assault rifle, was advancing with 10 heavily armed enforcers. Lucas looked completely unhinged. Don Lucas, Julian said smoothly, stepping directly in front of the double doors of the penthouse. He held up both hands in a placating gesture. I highly advise you to turn around. You do not want to go in there. Move, Julian, or I will put a bullet between your eyes, Lucas snarled, pressing the barrel of the rifle directly to Julian's chest. Where is my brother? If William laid a single finger on him, I am going to paint this hallway with his blood. Lucas, please listen to me, Julian tried one last time, purely to save the man from the psychological trauma awaiting him. It is not what you think. Your brother is not in danger. Your brother is, in fact, the danger. Lucas didn't wait. He drove the butt of his rifle into Julian's stomach, sending the right-hand man coughing to the floor. Breach it, Lucas ordered. Two enforcers kicked the heavy oak doors open. They splintered inward with a deafening crash. Lucas stormed into the penthouse, his heart pounding with pure, terrified adrenaline. Leo, I'm here. He cleared the living room in seconds, his rifle raised, turning the corner into the master bedroom. William, I'll kill you. Lucas froze. The world completely stopped spinning. The gun in his hand slowly, agonizingly lowered. There, in the center of the room, on the wildly tangled sheets of the king-sized bed, was his worst enemy. William was entirely shirtless. And trapped underneath him, his pale legs wrapped around William's waist, completely flushed and panting heavily, was Leo. For one long, horrifying second, Lucas's brain tried to process the scene through the lens of a kidnapping. He's assaulting him. William is forcing him. Get away from him. Lucas roared, his voice cracking with pure rage as he raised the weapon again, aiming directly at William's head. William's head snapped up. His eyes widened in absolute shock as he saw Lucas and 10 armed men in his bedroom. But before William could even react, Leo moved. No! Leo screamed. Leo scrambled out from under William, wildly grabbing the plush white duvet and wrapping it tightly around his bare torso. But he didn't run to Lucas. He didn't cower. Leo threw himself directly in front of William, shielding the naked alpha with his own body, his arms spread wide, facing the barrel of his own brother's gun. Luke, stop. Put the gun down. Leo shouted, his voice echoing in the silent, tense room. Lucas stared at his brother. He looked at the flushed skin, the swollen lips, the complete lack of fear in Leo's eyes. He looked at the way Leo was actively protecting the monster who was supposed to be kidnapping him. Leo, what? Lucas breathed out, his hands starting to shake. Angel, step away from him. He has a gun. He hurt you. He didn't hurt me, Lucas. Leo yelled back, tears springing to his eyes, realizing the game was entirely over. The truth was out. He didn't kidnap me. I wanted to be here. The silence that followed was heavier than a tomb. William slowly sat up behind Leo, grabbing a pair of discarded trousers and pulling them on, his eyes locked warily on Lucas. You wanted to be here. Lucas whispered. His voice was hollow. It sounded broken. Lucas's mind raced backward, connecting the dots in a horrifying, devastating montage. The oversized black dress shirt that smelled faintly of pine. The scraped knees and bleeding palms. The sudden interest in revealing clothes. The boy at college, who had supposedly pushed him down. The boy at college, Lucas said, his voice trembling as he lowered the rifle completely. He looked directly into Leo's tear-filled eyes. There was no boy at college. It was him. You were crying over him. Leo let out a sob, clutching the duvet tighter. Luke, I'm sorry. I lied to you. I've been sneaking out. I love him. Lucas physically stumbled backward, as if he had been shot in the chest. The terrifying Mafia boss looked suddenly fragile, his entire worldview shattering into millions of irreparable pieces. You lied to me, Lucas whispered, the betrayal slicing deeper than any knife ever could. He looked at his sweet, innocent angel, the boy he had protected from the darkness, the boy he thought was pure. Then, Lucas's gaze shifted from Leo to William. The heartbreak instantly vanished, replaced by a rage so dark, so absolute, that the air in the room felt poisonous. You, Lucas snarled, pointing a shaking finger at William. You manipulated him. You knew I protected him, and you used him to get to me. You corrupted my brother. I didn't corrupt anyone, Lucas, William said, his voice hard as he stepped out from behind Leo, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Omega. He came to me. And if you think I am going to let you take him away from me now, you are out of your mind. He is my blood, Lucas roared, his alpha aura exploding. And he is mine. William roared back, his own terrifying aura flaring to meet Lucas's clashing in the center of the room like a physical shockwave. Leo stood between the two most dangerous men in the city, the duvet clutched to his chest, sobbing openly. He had won William's heart, but in doing so, he had entirely broken his brother's. "Get your clothes on, Leo," Lucas ordered, his voice devoid of any of the warmth and love it usually held. It was cold and dead. "You are coming home. Now." "No," Leo cried, shaking his head. "I'm not leaving him. If you do not walk out that door with me right now," Lucas said, his eyes filled with agonizing tears he refused to let fall, "you are no longer my brother." The ultimatum hung in the destroyed master bedroom like a guillotine blade waiting to drop. "If you do not walk out that door with me right now, you are no longer my brother." Leo stopped breathing. The air in his lungs turned to ice. He stared at Lucas, desperately searching for the lie in his brother's eyes. He looked for the protective older brother who had held him, kissed his bleeding palms, and promised to keep him safe from the dark. But that brother was gone. The man standing in the doorway was Don Lucas, the cartel boss. His eyes were dead. "Luke, no," Leo whimpered, his voice trembling so violently he could barely form the words. He took a tiny, hesitant step toward Lucas, the white duvet slipping slightly from his shoulders. "Please, please don't do this. Don't make me choose between my heart and my family. You're my big brother. We're twins. We're supposed to be together forever." Lucas didn't flinch. He didn't open his arms. He stood as rigid as a marble statue. "The boy who was my twin died the second he let my worst enemy touch him," Lucas said, his voice entirely hollow. It lacked any anger, it was just a terrifying, absolute void. "You made your choice, Leo. When you lied to my face. When you looked me in the eye and protected the man who wants me dead. You aren't my angel anymore." A choked, agonizing sob ripped from Leo's throat. His knees buckled, the sheer weight of the rejection crushing him. Before Leo could hit the floor, William was there. The Alpha caught him, pulling Leo flush against his warm, broad chest, wrapping his arms securely around the trembling Omega. William glared at his rival over Leo's head, his jaw set in a furious line. "You are breaking his heart, Lucas," William growled, his alpha instinct screaming to protect the sobbing Omega in his arms. "You claim to love him, but you're throwing him away because of your pride." Lucas's gaze slowly shifted from Leo's broken form to William. The deadness in his eyes ignited into a cold, blue flame of pure, unadulterated hatred. "I am not throwing him away. You stole him," Lucas said, his voice dropping to a lethal, deadly whisper. He raised his chin, his dark aura filling the room with a suffocating promise of violence. "You took the only light I had in my miserable life. Keep him, William. Lock him in your tower. But know this." Lucas took one step backward into the hallway, his eyes burning into William's soul. "The treaty is ash. The truce is over," Lucas swore, his voice echoing with absolute finality. "I will never stop hunting you. You will never sleep soundly again. And one day, when you least expect it, I am going to put a bullet directly through your heart. Enjoy your prize while you still have a pulse." Lucas turned his back. "Lucas!" Leo screamed, a raw, entirely shattered sound that tore at William's own heart. Leo tried to scramble forward, reaching a hand out toward the hallway. "Lucas, come back, please." But the heavy, splintered doors of the penthouse closed. He was gone. The silence that rushed into the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of Leo's hysterical, hyperventilating sobs. He collapsed entirely against William, his hands gripping the Alpha's bare chest like a lifeline. "He left me," Leo cried, burying his face into William's neck, his tears scalding the Alpha's skin. "He actually left me, Willie. I thought he would just yell. I thought we would fight and then he would forgive me. He always forgives me. Why didn't he forgive me?" William held him impossibly tight, burying his face in Leo's dark hair. For the first time in his life, the ruthless Don William felt completely powerless. He had won the war. He had the Omega he had been driving himself crazy over. But as he held the broken, sobbing boy in his arms, William realized the astronomical, devastating price Leo had paid to be here. Leo hadn't just played a game. He had sacrificed his entire world, his only family, for William. "I've got you," William murmured fiercely, kissing the crown of Leo's head, rocking him gently as they knelt on the floor of the ruined bedroom. I've got you, Leo. I swear on my life, I will never leave you. I will protect you. You are mine now. I am your family. But Leo just wept, the victory of winning his alpha entirely eclipsed by the agonizing loss of his twin. Love had won the battle, but brotherhood had lost the war. Across the city, the black tactical SUV pulled up to the sprawling Lucas estate. The heavy iron gates swung open. The guards stood at absolute, terrified attention. They had seen the boss leave like a hurricane, but the man who stepped out of the vehicle looked entirely different. Lucas didn't look enraged. He looked like a ghost. He walked up the grand marble steps of his mansion. The doors were pulled open by his men. Maria, the head maid, was waiting in the foyer, her hands wrung tightly together in her apron. She had been praying to the saints for the safe return of her young master. She looked behind Lucas. The driveway was empty. "Boss?" Maria asked, her voice trembling as she stepped forward. "Where is he? Where is young Master Leo? Did William hurt him?" Lucas stopped in the center of the foyer. He looked around the grand, opulent mansion. Without Leo, the house didn't look like a home anymore. It just looked like a massive, cold, marble tomb. The light was entirely gone. "He is dead," Lucas said. Maria gasped, clapping a hand over her mouth, her eyes widening in sheer horror. "No. Lord, no. William did not kill him," Lucas clarified, his voice flat, monotonous, as he unbuckled his tactical vest and let it drop heavily to the floor. "But the boy who lived here is gone. He chose the enemy. From this moment forward, his name is never to be spoken in this house again. Anyone who disobeys this order will be executed." Maria burst into tears, but Lucas didn't stay to comfort her. He couldn't. He slowly walked up the grand staircase. Every step felt like he was walking through thick mud. He reached the end of the hallway and stood in front of Leo's bedroom door. He pushed it open. The room was exactly as Leo had left it hours ago. The bed was unmade. A pair of fluffy white slippers sat perfectly aligned by the nightstand. The air was overwhelmingly thick with the sweet, innocent scent of vanilla and wild strawberries. Lucas stood in the doorway, staring at the vanity mirror. A pastel pink sweater was draped over the chair. "He lied to you," Lucas's brain whispered. "Every time he smiled, every time he hugged you, he was plotting to go to him." Suddenly, the numbness in Lucas's chest shattered, replaced by a tsunami of pure, agonizing, explosive grief and rage. With a feral roar, Lucas grabbed the heavy, solid oak chair from the vanity and hurled it across the room. It smashed into the floor-to-ceiling mirror, sending thousands of jagged shards of glass raining down onto the plush carpet. "Liar!" Lucas screamed to the empty room. He tore through the bedroom like a hurricane. He ripped the heavy silk curtains from their rods. He grabbed the racks of carefully curated pastel sweaters, the innocent outfits Leo had used to manipulate him, and violently threw them out into the hallway. He swept his massive arm across the vanity, sending expensive perfumes, jewelry boxes, and makeup crashing to the floor. The glass bottles shattered, completely suffocating the room in the overwhelming scent of vanilla. Lucas grabbed the plush, heavy duvet from the bed and ripped it with his bare hands, feathers exploding into the air like a twisted snowstorm. He destroyed everything, every trace of the boy he had loved, every reminder of the angel who had betrayed him. Finally, breathing heavily, his hands bleeding from the broken glass, Lucas stopped. The room was annihilated. Lucas's knees gave out. The terrifying, ruthless cartel boss collapsed into the center of the ruins of his brother's life. He dropped his head into his bloody hands, and for the first time since he was a child, Don Lucas wept. He wept for his twin. He wept for his failure to protect him. And he wept because he knew, deep in his cold, broken heart, that the only way this ended now was with William's blood on his hands.